businessmen. I would like, well, um, let's talk about the business of gangster rap. A lot of people say that it's reached its peak.
I don't think so.
Really? You think it's going to go farther? Where is it going to go?
Over the top.
Uh-oh, Chris?
I mean, actually, the title gangster rap doesn't even really exist, because real gangsters don't rap. Gangsters. So maybe, I would go more into the idea of gangster record companies. If the real gangsters out here are the ones who own the gangster rapper. And to me, I mean, I don't know enough about the quarrel between Eazy-E and Dr. Dre to even jump into that. But what I will say is that the true gangster is the one that owns the gangster rapper. And if there is some validity to what you're saying, then I would say the true gangster would probably be right here, on another level. If you look at some of these record companies that's out, and I'm not going to say no names because I'm doing a lot of business with a lot of you people, but what I will say is that a lot of these companies at the highest level are gangsters themselves. And if you want to get rid of gangster rap, first you got to get rid of the gangster record company. And I'll just cut it off right there.
Okay. Your record company, you own your record company, right?
Right. Ruthless Records.
Ruthless Records. Okay. Cool. You're going to rap for us.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do this quick little intro before the video. I'll mention in the video a couple places where I say I might edit the video or go back and adjust certain things, but rather than chop up the video and do like a whole bunch of editing and switching things around and stuff like that, I'm pretty much just gonna let it play straight through as it was recorded. And I'm just gonna go ahead and address a couple points that I wanted to address here at the beginning. Really only a couple of points. I'm just going to go through them right now. The first being when I discussed towards the end of the video, this is probably the most important, so I'm just going to address them kind of in order. There is a discussion, actually the beginning and the end. That's one of the things I was going to edit. But the discussion around Scott LaRock's assassination, basically. And if you want this, like the source video to watch on this, it's going to be, well, I guess this is one. This one is Said G his video on Vlad, but I mean obviously if you don't want to watch this one, he does other interviews. You could watch it kind of like him explaining the situation. Just Google probably Said G Scott LaRock assassination record label or whatever you want to put in. But obviously this video he goes over like the basic overview of it if you want to watch this one, or we want to search for an article or whatever else. But basically, what I kind of forgot to do in the video was when I addressed at the beginning of the video, you'll notice I'll address the record labels on the East Coast and the ownership and those labels, and basically how that was arranged versus how it was arranged in some of the artists outside of the East Coast that got more attacked once the quote unquote gangster rap stuff got started. So the importance of the Scott LaRock situation was obviously he got assassinated, and the reasoning behind him getting assassinated had to do with the same consistent thing of ownership over their music, right? And Said G goes into this. I'm not going to go through it, but another important point that he brought up that was relevant was the Jive, because Jive is going to be as an important in Time Warner. And he mentions in this that Jive was, to just briefly go over the situation, there was B-Boy Records who Boogie Down Productions was sort of in a contract with. But obviously Scott LaRock was, one of them visionary, entrepreneurial type leaders in the game, way ahead of his time. And, KRS and it was basically all under him. So he was going to negotiate with Time Warner. Jive was doing the deal with them where they would control aspects of the of their publishing and, stuff like that. So they wouldn't have retained, the ownership level that they would have retained, under Time Warner. Certain individuals, who part of the label or whatever that he was signed to, and certain probably other entities, had an issue probably with that. That's what he, explains in this video. But another thing to address as far as this before I move to the next topic, for like this intro part, is that I don't know what the label was going to be called for Scott LaRock and Boogie Down Productions. I mentioned in it that the Boogie Down Productions, but I don't know what exactly what the label was going to be called, Boogie Down Productions or not. So I don't want to just to clear that up. I don't know exactly what it technically was going to be called. I assume Boogie Down Productions could have been the label name, but it probably could have had a different name or something else. So another thing that I want to point out that was kind of this isn't even really that egregious of an error. This is just kind of something I just wanted to clear up, is that I referred to Mob James as Mob James, but then I referred also to the fact that I don't think he wants to be called that anymore, just because he's like disassociating from that type of lifestyle and stuff. So I just said James, and I mentioned obviously some of Suge's homies that ended up getting killed. Here's an article on Buntry, friend of rap except killed. This was in 2002, and I think I might have said when I mentioned this because this is Mob James' brother, I think I might have said Alvin instead of Alton. So I just want to clear that up, as far as what his name was. And then another when I discussed Tupac, is Conversations, Monster Cody. Obviously he changed his name. I always forget what he changed it to, but obviously it's Sanika Shakur. So I obviously just out of respect, because he associated with this name. So just out of respect, that I didn't mention it in the video, I want to put that out up front. And then also I mentioned that some of the things are based on an article, a hip hop narrative, that was done by I Mix What I Like. I don't know if I can pull up the article. Yeah, here it is. I Mix What I Like. And then there's the video. Obviously, I referenced this at the beginning to kind of frame, the video as far as, what it's in response to some of the narrative of kind of defending C. Delores Tucker, which a lot of people do. And this is one of the, the sets of work, I guess, that does that more formally, versus just people on Twitter and just smaller YouTube videos and stuff like that. This is he did a little bit more formal work on it, I guess you would say. And obviously I disagreed with the defense of C. Delores Tucker at all. So I responded to this and I said that I'd reach out, and I did via email, just to make sure that beforehand, and just so it's clear. He did not want to address it before. He said that he might respond. This would be Jared Ball, was the one who did the video and the article. He might address it subsequent to posting it. So I just wanted to clear that up. And as far as just a response, to that, I hope that if he does respond, or if he does try to say that he doesn't go back, and reframe the argument as, well, C. Delores Tucker was right about corporations and the role over hip hop, and that she properly, pointed out, certain community issues, and certain, issues with the corporations, and certain issues with lyrical content, because that's that would just be kind of sort of a red herring, moving back to easy, because I have issue with the whole framework as far as the defense of C. Delores Tucker, with regard to how the takeover actually happened, in regard to the context and the history, what actually happened, and her real role. And my comparison was to BLM, but obviously, if people know if you don't know a lot about politics, if you do, then you probably definitely know of how Democrats and Republicans operate as far as how they handle issues. And that the Republicans, because there could be a comparison but you wouldn't be able to do it with her disposition as a Democrat because Democrats operate differently. So there is like the whole, oh well, what Republicans do as far as the welfare stuff, as far as the disintegration of the black family, and sort of conservative talking points about black on black crime, and obviously rap, the gangster rap controversy. You know how it started with a lot of Republicans and right leaning Democrats and stuff like that as well joined in. But obviously, the point you can make about Republicans is they obviously never offer positive solutions or more in depth neighborhood level criticisms as far as the system impacting, and as far as so like targeting of the corporations, for example. And they don't offer any kind of critique of either racism or any type of positive solutions as far as like this that could be technically address issues with incarceration, which obviously C. Delores Tucker kind of does that with the corporation thing, and she kind of does that with the addressing sort of the neighborhood level like real type issues. But that's technically Democrat Party strategy. So if you understand, which not everyone will understand this, but if it's people who do understand politics, understand that that's what differentiates Republican strategy from Democratic strategy in terms of appeal to particular groups of individuals. Whereas the Republicans, will go to capitalism, number one, and just kind of, personal responsibility type frameworks. The Democrats, instead, while they support the negatives, Democrats instead will speak to the issues, but then sort of not do anything about it. That's their basically strategy, to pretend that they care, to pretend that they're that they understand the issues, and pretend and say things that are true about this and this and this and this is wrong, and this and this and this could lead to this, but then they still perpetuate, and their agenda within the system is to perpetuate the system, and to basically still follow past and policy, et cetera, in their actual actions, that or just not be able to have an influence on it at all, but just to get your support, pretend speak to the right things, basically just try to get your support so you can support them to do nothing, right? That's been Democratic Party strategy for a while now. Just so that's understood, that context is understood, in case that becomes a response to what I'm doing here. Okay, so I need to do this little bit. I guess we could call this a preface. I've already done an introduction, but I actually went back and, as I mentioned in introduction, I reached out, to Jared Ball over the C. Delores Tucker thing, and the fact that I was going to do a video on it, to see if he wanted to kind of take a look at any of my points and clear anything up, beforehand. He didn't. So I went ahead myself and just went back over his work one more time before the video. And there was a couple of things I just want to address that I didn't address, in the video and introduction that I already have completed. So if you want to go look at, the various different works, they're all kind of linked in the main article that I discussed. So if you look at that article, the hip hop Still Trouble narrative, Requiem of C. Delores Tucker that I mentioned, if you go to that page, then the rest of the stuff will all be linked there, the videos and stuff. But basically, I guess what I want to do here is just quickly state the purpose of basically why I did the previous videos on Tupac and Eazy-E, and that whole history in connection to why I'm now doing this video. And then just address a couple little small points as fast as I can. So the first thing is, I guess, why did I do the previous videos? Well, I felt that there was, a narrative, a hip hop narrative from the mainstream, as you could see taken from, the online, obviously, Vlad TV being a big outlet. Another, the Straight Outta Compton movie, told basically through the lens of, a lot of Dre and a lot of Ice Cube. Then obviously their documentaries. There's a couple of Death Row documentaries. Suge had one when I think it was Showtime. Dre had one, which I think might have originally been on maybe HBO. Now it might be on like Peacock. It was on Netflix at one point in time. Defiant ones maybe. So there was several different projects that were done. Obviously, Tupac had a biopic at one point, and a lot of this information I felt part of the narrative was getting purposely kind of like given out in a false way. I felt to protect what would be the conclusions if you looked at the real history as far as what Tupac and the Eazy-E represented. And to break that down quickly, I think that they try to frame it in such a way to make the idea that Tupac and Eazy-E were both assassinated as crazy and kind of out of line with the narrative. So they have to have this narrative of like Eazy-E was just kind of everybody was getting screwed over by Jerry Heller. They left. Ice Cube was really behind the lyrics. Dre was really behind the beats, and that they left them be more successful. Easy was left there with Jerry, and then kind of had like a small little bit going on, and then ended up dying of AIDS, and that obviously contributed to the AIDS narrative. And then for Tupac, it was his attachment to gangs, to this thug life, to this thug image, that ended up having him killed through a confrontation. He contributed basically to his own demise, and that he was sort of like this paranoid, sometimes erratic character that ended up being, shot in a drive-by shooting. And so the first part of the series, the 8 parts, I deal specifically with trying to frame those topics. I talk about, Eazy-E's involvement, the foundations of Ruthless Records, his ownership of it. And then I get into, Tupac's connection to the Black Panthers and how he was specifically targeted for his political activism, right? That's the type of stuff gets brought up. And, I guess in addition, something to mention, about Eazy is that he was also, kind of way ahead of his time, like, in terms of, involvement, because this is something I don't mention in the actual video, but I want to just say real quickly, in terms of, trying to develop, audio type equipment to, video games and, like all this other type of different, stuff, from like an entrepreneurial type, disposition, besides just the music. But obviously the music is a big element. But a lot of all that stuff's discussed in the other parts, so I'm not going to repeat it here. But basically, connected to this, if you view those through the lens that you would have to come to the conclusion of, if you actually review the history of what happened, and come to the conclusion that both of them were assassinated, then those two become key figures within this narrative of what ultimately was the development of what ended up being called gangster rap, and what ended up being the gangster rap controversy, which played a significant role in their deaths, basically, and cover up their deaths, and to create basically a false narrative. That was part of the false narrative, according to my analysis of the situation. So that connects to C. Delores Tucker, because obviously C. Delores Tucker was a continuation. So where me and Jared Ball would say part ways is that specifically, he views C. Delores Tucker as someone who he can, I guess, defend. He might not want to say defend, but I don't know really any other way to put it.
Not so much a defense of C. Delores Tucker as a person or a political figure, as much as it is a defense for part of her argument around the protection of rap music from becoming commercial property and corporate product, turned against our community and our youth in particular.
From my perspective, the focus has to be 100% on the narrative of what happened during that era. And when I rewatched the video, his argument with Davey D, his like sort of debate, what ended up happening was Davey D would bring up a lot of points about the historical context of what's happening. Some of the same points that I might bring up in this video, but I bring up a little bit different stuff as well.
History will and has proven that C. Delores Tucker was right on a number of points, and her critique the type of music that was being put out by corporations. I'll say that, but I think in talking about the narrative, it's important to situate ourselves in the time in which it was being constructed.
But and he brings up some stuff that I don't bring up. But every time he tried to do this historical context to basically explain, Tucker did XYZ and that gave, XYZ reaction from the people involved, basically Jared would come up with basically what I felt was like a lot of like hypocrisy and a lot of contradiction as far as what he claimed his argument was.
I just want to just make sure that we have some of this framed right.
I know, but Davey, see, this is exactly my point, because what you're saying about what hip hop and activists were doing in the late 80s or in the 80s and going into the 90s is exactly the point I'm making.
But Tucker wasn't developing that critique, and let me make my point. That's the larger thing.
Because I mean, if your argument actually is to like, let's get proper narratives of hip hop, then I think you should do that. And another thing that was addressed that I could talk about real quick is how during that it kind of gave like sort of the it kind of gave like you could reach assume or imply based on that nobody else from this era could be utilized to make the point about what he's arguing that Tucker is making. And I'm not going to get into this, but I think it's severely overstating the fact to say that Tucker was actually against that can actually even be said to be used as a way to analyze corporations, because she did attack the lyrics. She attacked them, for the misogyny and everything else. But if you actually did want to, focus on the actual critique of the corporations and how corporations actually took over hip hop, you look specifically, like I did, at Eazy-E, because he had the black-owned record label that specifically was taken over by first, Sony, who filed a RICO case against through Death Row, and then ultimately he had to do the deal with the Interscope, and Interscope was then after they had to sell had to get Time Warner by the buyback to sell their shares and bought them back and resold them to MCA Universal, which basically became Universal, and had like a specific element Seagram buying. But I guess the point there is, if you wanted to look at that corporate takeover, that's what you would look at as far as the historical context as well. If you want to look at Tupac situation in terms of the lyrical aspects, Tupac was the one who was actually doing conscious lyrics. And I felt it was unfair because in the other video with Asher Rue, when this topic of Tupac came up,
she wasn't perfect, but on this argument, this point, she was right. In the hip hop historical narrative on this issue, got it wrong.
We did.
Anyway, so I'm glad
we listened to Tupac. We were listening to Tupac, and Tupac said, "Fuck you, Delores Tucker."
And KRS.
They kind of just basically like defamed Tupac in a sense, in the same way that they were trying to defend. Jerry was trying to defend C. Delores Tucker. He didn't defend Tupac.
My point is that it's at the same time it is disingenuous for people to misrepresent her argument, to literally truncate her commentary, to represent it in a way to defend their own non-radical critique.
In a situation to give a more proper analysis of what Tupac's actual position was on the issue, like specifically the fact that he did intentionally, with intent and consciousness, try to combat misogynistic lyrics by intentionally putting out conscious songs that were pro black women on every single album that he did, up to the point such as, when the first album was Brenda Got a Baby, the second album was Keep Your Head Up, and then his Me Against the World, it was Dear Mama. And then in addition to that, Tupac cites C. Delores Tucker for the reason why he quit with the conscious lyrics on All Eyes on Me project, right? Not in totality, but at least in part, he blames C. Delores Tucker because he was getting attacked anyway. So why even focus on trying to do conscious rap if you're not going to get any credit for doing it, and people are just going to attack you anyway? Why not just do whatever? and that's why he released the song actually was his actual critique of the kind of situation, and then C. Delores Tucker of wonder why they call you whatever.
So what's different about it? Talk about it compared to your own work. My other work, this album is a reaction to the backlash from C. Delores Tucker. Hey, turn that down. The backlash from C. Delores Tucker, Bob Dole, all those people that just kept sweating me about the music. Now I feel as though this album is something for them to sweat. But because before my albums wasn't even bad, and they was calling me a gangster and just messing up my whole credit line and just ruining my reputation. And look at my songs. On the first album, Brenda's Got a Baby. On the second album, Keep Your Head Up. On the third album, Dear Mama. Where's the killer music? Where's the make kids want to jump off a bridge shit? I just don't see it. So now, this album, I didn't try to make any Dear Mamas, any Keep Your Head Up. I just came straight with dealing with my own anger. I'm doing this just for what the music is, preventing my anger, getting everything I want to say out since I can't express myself in any other way, form, or anything. Plus, I was locked.
So, you'd assume that if the narrative was important, that point right there, as important as it is, would have gotten brought up. So that's kind of the first thing I want to get out of the way. The other thing that I guess I could talk about real quickly here is that Tupac also recognized that as far as how they were promoting Biggie, that's the other reasons why he started doing a different type of music, is he did recognize how they were promoting certain artists such as Snoop over him, Biggie over him, and eventually it was Jay-Z after Biggie passed away, and they did keep promoting these lyrics, and Tupac saw it at that time, and he started addressing it. I mean, part of his dispute with Biggie was about that. The other part obviously was about how the quad shooting, and basically how Biggie kind of switched up from where Biggie was supposed to be originally down with the thug life type of stuff, and then kind of went over to Puffy and then started doing this other type of stuff and contributing to a lot of what ended up being the issue. And another thing to point out about that is how C. Delores Tucker, not only in terms of Tupac's lyrics, in terms of him getting away from conscious music, but specifically her being a part of the gangster rap controversy, which was specifically designed to attack that conscious type of music, to censor that type of music. And she did, just develop basically the extension on it. And like I said, I'm not going to get into that aspect, but I do felt that there was some just basically, aspects of those details that Jared Pohl just exaggerated or got wrong, or just kind of just blatantly kind of just framed in his own way in order to go out of the way to make this thing a claim about the corporations, which I think is a complete overstatement of the fact as far as her critique on corporations, which is basically non-existent. And if anything, that I would agree with even the mainstream hip hop narrative that she actually contributed significantly to the anti-blackness and basically the whole narrative and context of the crime bill type legislation, with the way she did frame it, even playing the black on black crime type card, even in her solutions to the problems were, and that even kind of brings up her bourgeois boule disposition to even frame the whole critique and the solutions to it, and a totally pro-capitalist defense of even the corporations. I mean, and that's without getting into, and that's what I wanted to discuss. Basically, what I can't get into in here is lyrical content, because there could be a whole conversation to be had just about artistic expression, lyrical content in relation to just art in general, and whether or not that could even play a role in any type of revolutionary activity at all, basically, from the whole standpoint of the revolution would not be televised, from the whole standpoint of I showed the clip of Malcolm X in the video of him stating only black people have entertainers as their leaders, right? So from that whole standpoint, and also the lyrical content in general, as far as how that had an impact on crime generally, or in contradiction to C. Delores Tucker argument that was going to have a big impact on crime, is something needed to be done, including her terrible even as Jared Ball recognized, that laughed at the idea of boys' schools.
Patterned after the Milton Hershey schools in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the Stephen Girard's College in Philadelphia, and Father Flanagan's Boys Town in the Midwest. I don't know about all that, man. Anyway.
And basically, like boarding type, things, and like, like substitutes for prisons basically of youth on basically, military grounds, and a whole bunch of other just kind of like crazy ideas that she was proposing at this time. Something like the schools, for example, could have like, historically have like, almost also like an inevitable connection to like, sex crimes and predators and stuff like that, as it, historically, has in cases and scandals and stuff like that that's come out of those type of situations.
First of all, we must use all means possible to eradicate and ban the sale of illegal guns. We must remove guns from the hands of our children and our gangsters who are so proud of the power of the gun. That's no.
And then she was calling, for stuff like obviously the liberal, obvious de-arming of, disarming of the black community, through, taking guns and stuff off the streets, was just totally ignoring like, either like, how they got there in the first place, as far as, actually attacking the politicians and, the CIA and FBI and all these other organizations that either dumped all these guns and drugs and contributed to the dumping like all these guns and drugs into the neighborhoods in the first place. And then also with defense for this, like she was ignoring the First Amendment, just ignore the Second Amendment too, because she also called for, besides the disarming, called specifically for the censorship of gangster rap.
It was never intended by the founding fathers of this nation that First Amendment rights were meant to protect obscenities.
And if you specifically want to censor gangster rap, what do you think that means within the context of, this capitalist white supremacist society? I mean, that's just calling for a total policing of the lyrics. Not only would that have a negative impact on the lyrical content, in terms of not just having content this, what she would consider, raunchy or violent. Any type of revolutionary content at that point would have just probably been off the table, right? Any type of cop or anti-establishment, anti-politician lyric would have just been gone if she would have got away with that. I mean, the whole thing was basically just in the general context of, the type of individuals that supported like the crime bill and stuff. It was just, from that standpoint, it's just kind of crazy what her solutions were. And I say that to say that, in the video, actually, like, kind of like, took basically the argument a little bit too seriously, because I talk about, her defense of, community and making up points like that. I said it was sort of irrelevant. But I mean, when I actually looked at it, like a little bit over again, after having reviewed it for a long time, whoa. And as mentioned, if you're going to actually correct the narrative and, support basically, a more revolutionary framework for hip hop, then obviously, you look at Tupac solutions, like I discussed in my, other videos, where Tupac was actually laying out the political narrative that I mentioned that actually got him assassinated. And, I guess a second thing towards that same end was I did actually look up and actually found which I didn't know before, when I discussed how she came like into the mix, as I mentioned the issue of where she got the Doggy Style album. Like, did she have like a younger? And yet, yes, that was the case. There was someone, according to her family, it was someone who was younger in the family. I can't remember what they said the relation was, but it was a get together. I think Doggy Style might have came out in November, so around Christmas time they said. I'm assuming that's what they said. It was Christmas time, because I was close, maybe like a month later, that she saw the album somehow around that time where this individual had it. And then obviously you could, I still think it's kind of, suspicious as far as, even the ability to be able to, just from the standpoint of, and this is another point where I see Jerry Ball making contradictory points, right? Because when it was, he was having a conversation with Davey D, and Davey D brought up the idea of, rappers being malleable and maybe just to be a little bit more ignorant.
The reason, for instance, those artists were there with enough prominence to have a voice at that Ozone gathering is because they were already representing a politics that the corporate world would want to promote and make popular, which was to the detriment of radical traditions and trajectories that were pre-existent and still existent in both hip hop and outside in the community.
I think you would have to talk.
Jared had to quickly jump in to say, well, the reason why they're more ignorant, on particular facts about, as far as, voting for Obama, for example, and why they would even need to be educated on why you couldn't, like, Obama would just be like a non-option, basically, from, a particular revolutionary standpoint, is that, the kind of design, the corporation, which obviously it's not part of C. Delores Tucker's, argument anyway, right? She doesn't have this type of, either Marxist or, I wouldn't say, Pan-Africanist. She doesn't have, like, a Pan-Africanist that's based in, like, materialist analysis or Marxist left-wing analysis. That's very bourgeois, and that's where the politics does come into play. But back to the point, the point is that the same analysis for why these rappers at any point in history almost wouldn't be able to come up and be the type of individuals who could contribute to, like, revolutionary politics, like, from the jump. I mean, and just kind of a side note real quickly, if there ever was going to be anybody who did do that, that would have been Tupac, and C. Delores Tucker actually aided against Tupac, and actually aided in the gangster rap controversy, which, I mean, inarguably, in my opinion, was utilized as an attack against him to censor him, and to stop his political revolutionary activities, which C. Delores Tucker, wittingly or unwittingly of that particular fact, contributed to. And specifically, also with regard to C. Delores Tucker, one of the point I was making before is that the same issue with why the rappers are going to have the disposition that they have within a particular confines of the industry is the same that's going to allow C. Delores Tucker, as from her boule, bourgeois, basically class position, to be able to just have a copy of Doggy Style, take a look at this one album within a sea of context, have probably the minimal possible credentials to be able to discuss this issue, and yet end up in a Senate hearing within less than a month. Okay, that's nobody else in the hood or anywhere in the streets. Nobody has anything close to that type of opportunity to do something like that. Obviously, as they mentioned in the video, no other rappers got that opportunity to go discuss at that particular hearing, even though their music was being discussed. And instead, they had another, plant type of individual, Michael Eric Dyson. So, I mean, like, to just ignore that point, the fact that C. Delores Tucker's disposition allowed her to make this incorrect narrative around, gangster rap, around lyrical content, around basically, the political, economic, circumstances of Black people in America, stuff that she had literally no credentials and no clue about. And this is important, the point just to hit home real quick. This will probably be the last thing. I'll mention one more thing after this, is that from the standpoint of, what's wrong with society today, and one of the reasons why we can't get anything, accomplished, is because individuals like C. Delores Tucker are in this instance, are getting defended over Tupac, basically. In this instance, the way that Jared Bowe actually framed it, whether that was intentional or not, I doubt it was. He probably thought that, maybe given that he did, his video with Jean Patache a couple, back in the day that I remember seeing, where he was looking at not Chris Tucker, but Chris Rock's argument that Tupac and Biggie both got shot and can't be viewed as assassination, and then he let Jean Patache discuss his book on FBI war against Tupac on the channel to kind of dispel that part. But he just didn't do that when it was relevant to defend Pac in that situation against C. Delores Tucker. Apparently, because the point of defending C. Delores Tucker was bigger than the actual revolutionary. Defending the boule bourgeois, lady with no analysis was, more important than the actual radical who actually had analysis and actually had a political plan to actually impact the communities, and actually got murdered, assassinated for that particular plan that he was trying to implement, and for his ability to actually have an impact on what C. Delores Tucker was just talking about. So I figured, I thought that was a huge thing, just to kind of just, lie by omission, basically. And the only last thing I wanted to say was that I do a lot of defending of, Easy and a lot of these black record label owners who were the ones who were the also besides the attack on for the lyrical content, the other attack for the corporate takeover, which the gangster rap controversy also helped, and C. Delores Tucker obviously helped. I mean, pretty directly. You could say indirectly, however you want to give her credit for participating in that. The corporate takeover. But I do want to point out that I don't want this to be misconstrued as a defense of like any type of like, black capitalism or anything like that. My point was, the ownership of the black labels being, crucial to, from a white supremacist standpoint to make sure that, these white supremacist power elites, whose names I obviously mentioned, as far as, record companies and some of the previous work that I did, just for them to take it over, that was necessary for them to usurp that power from the black label, like who founded this very popular. It was revolutionary from my perspective. Something like F the Police or something like that was, but who pioneered this type of music that was also selling like crazy, and was also giving them big opportunities in business, particularly where Eazy-E had a vision to get into things like he was kind of predicting like he was already in like the business to have like like audio equipment and speakers, and he was already talking about like video games and stuff like that people weren't even like contemplating back like years before Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that. So I thought that this is very important just to do this little preface to get these like some of these little points out of the way. I'm not going to be able to address every little point with regard to this. Another really advanced point that I can make here with regard to colonial violence, and I don't want to attribute this necessarily to Fanon. I would just say this is my view, but from a psychoanalytic standpoint and understanding of colonial violence, seeing violence turned against from the colonized against each other and escalation would speak to, if you understand the progression, would speak to a situation where you might want to look out for a turn, and then that violence turned against the colonizer in a revolutionary situation. So the attack against gangster rap was an understanding of that from the people in the political world. And C. Delores Tucker obviously attacked gangster rap, so she was part of that as well. So that's another thing to point out. Another thing that you do have to worry about is so it escalate against being against the violence in the lyrics, and that violence manifested against the black community, black on black, however you want to put it. If you understand the advances of colonial violence, you actually would want to stop that, because that escalation is specifically going to lead to a revolutionary turn where they realize that violence utilized obviously against each other can be utilized against, and they were deadly serious concerned with that. That's why the anti-cop stuff was the thing that they went at the hardest, because and that was the first thing that they censored well before C. Delores Tucker, or at least years before C. Delores Tucker. And obviously she continued against gangster rap just generally, but obviously now they don't really have to worry about that as much, even though we have drill and stuff like that, because they were able to thoroughly eliminate the revolutionaries. But technically, obviously, that could still be a danger at any point in time. But that's another point to bring up within the context of that time, because obviously that turn was definitely very prominent on their minds, and it's something they was very scared of. So attack against gangster rap in any sense was attack against that, and obviously that's why they took Tupac out. Okay, I'm about to get straight into this. I mentioned on Twitter that I might do a C. Delores Tucker type of video explaining some of that history of the gangster rap controversy and the stuff that happened around that. So I'm gonna get right into that. I'm gonna pre-record this, and then I'll probably edit it. I might, I guess what I'm gonna be working around, because the main person I saw with this, defense of C. Delores Tucker stuff, besides just, people picking it up on Twitter, or, just people I guess this is a sort of recent thing of people defending C. Delores Tucker, but the first person that I saw do it heavily was Jared Ball. So it's going to be around Jared Ball. I might reach out to see if he wants to comment on some of my views on it before I post the video, just out of like, courtesy maybe. But I'm just gonna go ahead and get it right into this, and then I'll go through my sources, basically my framing of the issue, and then I'll go from there, as far as when I edit it, when I put it out, as far as what it ends up on the final. So let me go with my screen. I'm gonna go straight into I might as well go with this. You should be able to see the video on here. I'm not gonna play all the video. There's a video and an article by Jared Ball on this. As of right now, here's the article. It's called, if anybody wants to come check it out, Hip Hop Still Trouble Narrative, Requiem for C. Delores Tucker. And the video is part of a longer video. As you can see, it starts at around, it says 26:55 right here. If you want to jump and watch the whole thing, I'm not going to watch the whole thing. I'm about the 30-minute mark now. I might play just a little bit so you can get his main, what he considers his main argument. And then I'll go into some stuff around that main argument of what I feel what it really misses. Because he mentioned some other stuff in the video. I'll just try to summarize it though, because I don't want to go through this whole video. I think it gets from like 30-minute mark all the way up to around, let me see, over an hour. So this is basically like, 40 minutes. It looks like 40, 50 minutes of him on this issue, going through the article. And I'm not going to go through all that. So we'll just play a little bit of it, see what he has to say as far as the summary. And then we'll go from there.
That's on imixwhatilike.org and is a subject of a presentation. But and I do want to take some time to just go through this because I think it's extremely. I think what I'm trying to say here, is valuable beyond just a discussion of hip hop, and is something that on Twitter the other day someone was saying that. That my argument or that I was missing the point, that because C. Delores Tucker is such a flawed character, that using her or seeming to come to her defense ruined the point of my argument. And I'm saying that actually has nothing to do with the argument I'm making. Her character, her politics, in many ways make my point. Her flaws in many ways make the point I'm trying to make. And essentially the broader...
Okay, here I don't know what he's talking about as far as how her flaws make his broader point, but I mean I don't think that really helped the point at all. Her flaws, I think that it worked in the opposite direction, but that's kind of sort of regardless. I don't know how much of that's going to play a role as far as what I want to show and what I want to go through. I don't think that her flaws in terms of being like either like bourgeois. However you want to frame it, like from the civil rights, like mainstream Democratic Party tradition of politics, that plays a role insofar as you could view her as agent opportunist, because you understand structurally what those what that entails, right? What connection to that specific background and those specific individuals, as far as the mainstream Democratic Party, like the individuals who's usually in that space and usually have access to those spaces usually have access to certain agendas and working for a certain group of people in a particular direction. So as far as that, it has connection. But as far as making a point, not making a point or whatever, that's going to be sort of irrelevant. But let him get into to cover his main point, what he's talking about.
The summary is that her argument about corporations taking over rap and hip hop to the detriment of Black youth and the Black community is correct, and that in an attempt to defend hip hop, early journalists and writers, and then some of the biggest names in hip hop historiography have misrepresented, misquoted, truncated, I think inexcusably distorted her argument using her bad character. to justify their own flawed narrative that hip hop has been a net positive to the condition materially and otherwise of black people in this country.
Okay. So here is probably the main flaw is how he's juxtaposing it, right? So he's opposing, and I mean, I maybe this is okay for what he wanted to do, but I mean, as far as in general, if you're going to do a serious analysis, it's kind of stupid. So if he's juxtaposing basically C. Delores Tucker versus other people in like hip hop media, that are, you know, pushing a particular narrative of hip hop being like this, you know, sort of positive from a commercialized standpoint, then, you know, sort of overall positive, like a revolutionary positive or something like that, then there'd be a point. But the problem is that you're talking about two different sides of, you know, the same coin type of deal here. Like maybe they're both on the same you know, team as far as like being like liberal or whatever else, but you know, you got one defending the music without critiquing, and you got one attacking the music and then critiquing the corporations, but in a way that's completely just like completely towards the agenda and helping the other side. So in both cases, you basically got a defense that helps the corporations, and then you got another attack that ends up being attack sort of that seemingly could be against the corporations, but in reality, once we take a look at, you know, a lot of what was happening in context, that's not really what went on or even could have went on, right? And the points that he goes, if I want to summarize his points, because I did watch most of this, it would be that C. Delores Tucker was right in attacking the corporations, right, in corporate takeover of hip hop, which was then obviously had a negative impact. And I guess the issue would be, yeah, that's true, but then C. Delores Tucker, right? So, like, what would be the point? What would be the outcome? And one of the things he mentions here that just kind of just show that, you know, is completely flawed and lacking any historical context or analysis, is that he mentions one, C. Delores Tucker starting the trying to start her own like conscious label, right? But then he also mentions you know, artists like coming out of the, like, I guess what you would say like East Coast like conscious tradition. I think Public Enemy would be the example that I think he used. Fight the Power. There was a #1 before like I guess what would have been before NWA, the rise of NWA, and then obviously Death Row. So the context of that really, really matters, right? And you could be right about something, but then your intentions and everything else that's going along with it be completely negative, and pointing out that this right doesn't need to involve that person at all, right? And that's pretty much going to be the point, because C. Delores Tucker really doesn't have to be brought up and defended in order to then explain the narrative of how there was a corporate takeover of hip hop, and she was irrelevant at the time anyway, as far as that, right? She only worked towards the negative. So that's like me. I'm gonna give you a perfect analogy. That's like someone like me, or not. I mean, even someone like me, someone with a little bit more ill intent than me, and someone with a little more petty opportunism. It's kind of like, I guess the perfect example would be when they show up to critique like the police. Every time someone dies to the police, and they send these, like, I don't know, they used to call them like race hustlers or something. Like, it used to be like Jesse Jackson, but and Al Sharpton type people. But, you know, people started getting hip to that, so they started sending in people like Tamika Mallory and my son and stuff like that. They started using a little bit of different, little bit more youthful people, and Black Lives Matter, right? They started sending these people in, and then what you end up happening in the same situation is the exact same thing that happened right then, right? So yeah, these people were okay with their critiques of you know, the police and stuff like that. I mean, I guess you could say that, right? Of police killing you know, black men, unarmed black men, women, whatever else. It doesn't matter. But when they step into the situations, what they ended up doing is serving as a distraction serving as a jump off point for like, you know, conservatives to go after, right? Because Black Lives Matter has, you know, all these flaws and all these issues, this easy target for you know, white supremacists and, you know, Republicans and everything else, right? Same thing with Al Sharpton and other people, right? So they send in that level of a distraction. And then also it distracts away from the fact that the people on the ground actually doing the real work, right? Are actually being, you know, murdered in certain instances, like in Ferguson, you know, where you had a lot of those people ended up, you know, dead, who was part of like the real raw, you know, street, you know, movements. And a lot of those people warned and stuff about, you know, that type of deal, right? And I think the same thing happened in, you know, Louisville and stuff like that, where you had them coming in, you know, and they come in, you know, they clout chase really off of the, you know, the issue. They bring popularity to themselves. They bring money into their organizations and stuff like that. But they're not the people on the ground, they're not the people in the streets, you know, who have like the, who are the people that's supposed to be speaking to that. And they're not the people who's supposed to be, you know, the ones that, you know, carry up that fight. And they end up not having the context anyway, and not having like, you know, the background of what's actually going on. So what are you doing there? You don't have any of that. And that's what happened in this situation with C. Delores Tucker, although she also had, you know, well, I guess in both cases, there's nefarious, you know, intent behind it anyway. Both like, you know, coming from like the Democratic Party type deal, right? So, and that'd be the same thing, like, you know, the gang violence and stuff like that, right? Because, you know, you could be like, oh, like black on black, like crime or something like that, like the Republicans do all the time, black on black crime, but they're not speaking on black on black crime to actually try to help black on black crime. They're just doing it to demonize black people. And even if it came along with a critique of, you know, white supremacy, like it does with like these Democratic Party groups, like the Black Lives Matter, even if it comes to critique like that, if their actual intentions and what they're actually trying to, you know, bring about is not good, and it's trying to serve like an opposite purpose, a controlled opposition type purpose, then that's end up what it's being, even if they're truthful about, you know, any type of core element that could just be facts, right? And you know, that matters in this case because if you watch my videos on, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of stuff that's in my videos, right? From my YouTube channel, right? So a lot of the videos that I did an 8-part series, right, on you know, NWA and Tupac and Eazy-E's deaths and stuff like that. And one of the things that's covered like throughout was, you know, Tupac's activism as far as, you know, working to politicize gangs and stuff like that, from John Pottish's work on, you know, the FBI war against Tupac and stuff like that. But there was tons of people like, you know, in the streets, right, trying to work, you know, as there is still today. And you know, some of them are rappers, some of them have connections to rappers and stuff like that, you know, who are trying to bring gangs together, stop gang violence and stuff like that. So you can have all this criticism you want about the rap music and how they're promoting whatever, but then it doesn't get publicized that certain individuals are trying to stop gang violence and certain individuals are trying to, you know, help their community, stuff like that. And those are the individuals that get attacked, murdered, assassinated, and stuff like that, right? And on the flip side of things, you have people actually was from the labels and executives and stuff like that, like as far as you know, like you know, Eazy-E and stuff, that were trying to gain ownership and control, and also were conscious of the fact of the music and the messaging behind the music, but they actually had control of actual labels, and they weren't just trying to do some funny business. They weren't trying to just you know, come up and try to, you know, out from an outside perspective and come in and take over and do all this nonsense like C. Delores Tucker was doing. But they actually had, like, you know, they were in the field and they actually had positions to be able to do that. And C. Delores Tucker was just coming in and distracting away from that, right? And that is a huge point because of what happened to Eazy-E too, right? And you're going to see this trend all the way up until today, independent artists and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, who you mention. You know, if you look at like Michael Jackson, you know, what happened to him, and, you know, how he had a large control over catalogs, Elvis's catalogs, the Beatles, Sony, shares, and like, you know, chunks of the music that these type of people wanted. And we saw what happened to him. Prince always preached, you know, owning masters, owning stuff like that, you know. And there's been a lot of independent artists who's been being, you know, attacked, and you know, they go after him and stuff like that, to try to attack their independence, right? Because another point he makes throughout in this video is about specifically about the lack of independence, and he mentions I think Universal Music Group, I think it's who he mentions, but one of the main conglomerates, Lucian Grange, I think he mentions specifically, right? And I think that's the Universal Music Group. Let me go ahead and I know I had it pulled up, but let me go ahead and go to the Wikipedia and pull up. I think it's Universal. Yeah, Lucian Grange is Universal. This is who he mentions to bring up the point that the music is controlled through distribution, right? But there's a lot of independent artists who might distribute through Universal Music, and he also mentions YouTube and lyrical, right? But if and then he mentions C. Delores Tucker starting his and her label, but then who would she be distributed through, right? And who would these other people we distributed through to who were like, such as Def Jam and Fight the Power, which he mentioned, and Public Enemy, who were they being distributed through back then, right? So yeah, there's this corporate takeover of hip hop, but it's not like she would have helped. It's not like if you release conscious music, it would have helped. And that's without even getting into points like the fact that, you have two of the biggest artists over this, time period, J. Cole and, Kendrick, who do a lot of that type of conscious music, right? I think Kendrick even has a lyric about, letting a conscious rapper go commercial, only making conscious, stuff, right? He does a lot of conscious stuff. J. Cole does some like, that type of stuff. There's artists that definitely do that type of stuff. And, today, right, that are big artists that sell and have influence over, the youth and stuff like that. It's not just all, and you could tell that it has to partly to do with that, because I pulled it to the other video, right? He mentions, when they start talking about, going to the classrooms and mention the people, he mentions the artists, right?
Some of their music is dope, but I gotta really dig through it. Like, they gotta really point it out for me, because I can't. But you got naming their five.
I don't even know who they are.
Super excited. They write down who they love. And it's always people like Polo G and Lil Durk, and they naming their five.
I don't even know who they are.
Right. So two big artists from, I guess this whatever this was supposed to like last year or something like that, doesn't even know who they are. So I mean, how are you trying to give criticisms of rap music and how it evolved to today if you're not even aware of who specific, very popular artists even are? You only have to listen to their music, but you don't know who they are. So I mean, to have that type of disconnect from the current culture and stuff like that, and then try to have, it just, come on. But whatever, I'm gonna get into the the more details to points, because I'm actually gonna bring up sources. He referenced his own article in this, but I'm actually gonna start bringing up actually the timeline first. And we'll look at the timeline, because the first thing, if I just want to go through this, I'm going to try not to go too long in this video, but the first thing that I want to, so I can outline it, I'll probably look at the timeline to show that C. Delores Tucker came a little bit late, right? So we'll look at when she came, in the context when she came, because she wasn't the one who started the gangster rap controversy, and she wasn't the one who started coming after the artist. That was started by the Republican Party a lot, and it was started, the cop killer controversy was before that. And they started attacking, the music from the start, right? And that's a big deal. That's sort of a big deal, right? Because she didn't come out of nowhere, out of a vacuum, and she wasn't the one that first started the gangster rap stuff. The lyrics are bad, and just because those people weren't talking about a corporate takeover, doesn't mean that she wasn't in the same vein. She wasn't in the same type of movement, right? Because this is very important. So let me go ahead and get to the timeline real quick. Okay, this is my timeline that I used for when I made the videos, right? And what you're going to see important here is I don't have all of it on here, because some of the targeting stuff I just put in the videos, but I didn't actually put up, right? Because I think it was like 89, 88 or whatever when they started going out there. And the first thing that started going out there was people like NWA and people like and I'll get to this in a minute. But they started going after NWA and stuff first once Ruthless started forming, and other groups like Two Live Crew, they went after like Rap a Lot, the Ghetto Boys, You know, obviously later on they went against Tupac and Ice-T, right? Because that's what I had on here, Tupac and Ice-T, because my video was specifically about Tupac, so I didn't go into like when they went after the Ghetto Boys and stuff like that. I do mention them going after NWA over the police, right? So so this is Cop Killer recorded, and you'll see this as not the early '90s, and then you got Deep Cover recorded. You have March 1992, members of the Austin Fraternal Order of Police aware of Cop Killer. This is when they first become aware of it, so to speak. And then what you're also going to notice is that you have then the issue where okay, here's a shareholder meeting, because this was around Time Warner, because Time Warner was the main one being targeted because Time Warner owned, and this is very important too, I guess. See, Time Warner, okay, this is what it was all about, sort of, right? Time Warner owned share in a lot of these rap labels. They were a part of like the distribution, a lot of the rap labels that was coming up independent and stuff like that. And what eventually was trying to happen, well, originally Sony went after the artists on Death Row, right? I mean, not Death Row. Well, they came to Death Row, but there's originally on Ruthless. Sony did, and then what happened was Eazy-E sues them, and this is October '92. And here you have Dan Quayle calls for I'll just go over all this. September is when Linda Davidson sues Pac over the Ray Howard situation. That's where he killed a cop, and they blamed his album on there. And then Dan Quayle calls for a pull in. Around the same, Bob Dole later goes after him. I think Clinton step in and stuff like that. And around this time, here's a Deep Cover soundtrack, right? And one thing that I'll point out, I'll probably get into later too, is and here's the shooting. I'll probably get into here's where they blamed him, blamed Tupacalypse Now, right? So I'll probably go over this part about the Deep Cover, because what's kind of strange and it's kind of coincidental is they were going after a cop killer, right? Well, what's Deep Cover about? 187 on Undercover Cop. So you're going after all these people over making cop killer songs, but then all of a sudden, Snoop Dogg comes out and Dr. Dre come out with their song. The main artist that they were like trying to control was Dr. Dre. So Dr. Dre comes out with his version, and then all of a sudden, like, there's no controversy around it, but then there's a huge controversy around Cop Killer, and there's huge controversy like targeting Tupac, like to the point where Dan Quayle was mentioning it. And then what ends up happening throughout this entire period is Tupac is censored, his music is censored. That's why he has like a lot of issues with the albums coming out. I mean, a lot of, and then obviously they set him up to go to prison. Obviously, which is a huge deal during this time, and all this stuff has to be discussed. It's all a huge deal, right? So Tupac's releasing conscious music that's getting attacked and blamed for cop killings. So, and his music is getting censored, so he can't say anything. And after the police and stuff like that is important too, because that was lyrics basically that was politicizing around police brutality, right? And people being against the police, and they were on that stuff hard because they wouldn't want black people to be revolutionized to the point of opposing police or having a consciousness around that, right? And that's the point, right? If Jared's trying to make a point about specifically with C. Delores Tucker about making a conscious music that's going to make the people aware and stuff like that. That's what a lot of the music was doing, even though it was doing it in a more street, a more street conscious type of way, instead of a more, kind of like, college dorm conscious type of way, right? It was doing, they was making music for the streets for real, and not for just, college kids. But I mean, I don't know. But anyway. And also, after Tupac, and then you can watch my video for all that stuff, because this timeline is basically just all stuff I put in the videos. So you can see Tupac released this album around the same time, and immediately after he gets beat up by the police. He gets police brutality against him for jaywalking, and then the album's released, and then it's immediately after that it gets targeted for cop killer controversy, one of the first parts of the gangster rap controversy, as it becomes public, more public and more media driven. And then, eventually he sued, and then they're getting for the thing over the sexual assault, right? And then he goes to prison, and then that's when he ends up going to death row after that, right? To get out of prison and stuff like that. So let me see what else I want to go through on here. So I guess what else would be important here is the Sony RICO, right? And let me explain this real quick. So, okay. Originally, Eazy-E had, all the artists, right? He had Michel'le, he had Ice Cube, all NWA. So Ice Cube and Dr. Dre. And Dr. Dre was the core component, because Dr. Dre stuff is the stuff that, if you follow the history, was the stuff that was really going crazy, right? The Chronic, Doggy Style, and then after he took a little break, right? And he started coming out with the 2001, and then Eminem stuff, and then 50 Cent and The Game, so the Interscope stuff after that, right, was all big stuff, right? And so a lot came out of that. So the NWA stuff started the big stuff, though, right? It started the selling stuff, and then obviously the early Death Row stuff, and then after that you come with the Eminem stuff, and that stuff is selling, right? Eminem's one of the most top selling artists, probably, in hip hop history, as far as commercial sales, at least up until that point when he was coming out with that stuff, like the Marshall Mathers stuff, and Eminem show and stuff like that was going pretty crazy, right? So the RICO case, so Sony comes after the artist. Eazy-E ends up following this RICO, and this is important because what it allows him to do then is go back and negotiate. See, Sony ends up trying to go after the artist, right? So Sony kind of drops out of it, and then what ends up happening is he ends up negotiating with Jimmy Iovine and Interscope to get basically rights to Dr. Dre's music, right? So he gets a piece of everything that Dr. Dre's doing.
I had no idea that you make money off product from Dr. Dre and Snoop. Now, how did that work out?
Basically, I had Dre signed as exclusive producer and exclusive artist.
Mm-hmm.
So when Dre tried to make his deal over at Interscope, I was included for the next 6 years. So you can say all you want to say. Basically, you could diss me all you want, but I'm going to get paid. Because that's why I say Dre Day is only easy.
And really, after the Chronic, Dr. Dre really kind of, well, even with the Chronic, he had help from the other people that was around. But especially on Doggy Style, he had a lot of help. A lot, probably more. And he was going around the studio a lot less because, see, the Chronic album, this is sort of important, but this is kind of a sidebar. It's kind of like a side, like, tangent, basically. So what you got with the Chronic was recorded in a Solar studio, which should be in the documentary. And then after that, they started going to Can-Am, whatever, I think that's what it's called. But they started going in there, and like that's where a lot of the violence and stuff was happening. And Dr. Dre was sort of out. But I think some of it kind of had to do with him not making a major project really until 2001, Chronic 2001 or whatever. I think some of the issue with that was that Eazy-E was getting paid off a lot of some of that stuff. I think that kind of had something to do with it. And Dr. Dre really wasn't getting any of the money during this period because Death Row was sort of a front group. But that's probably the core issue here, is that Eazy-E was trying to save his label, and they were trying to take over. And that's a core issue here that I want to discuss probably in a second, is that a lot of these labels that started going out there was black owned. And they didn't own the distribution yet, but if all these black labels started building up and started taking all the artists, and they started signing all the artists, then them being black owned, they would have been able to eventually get distribution, right? Because imagine if during this time period, imagine if Above the Law, NWA, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, the Ghetto Boys, so Scarface, Willie D, Pac, Biggie, because you know Biggie eventually probably would have went with some of that stuff too if Pac and then was all going to that stuff. You know, Snoop and all these artists, you know, assuming, you know, who was, you know, real and who wasn't, right? But the real ones, the real down ones, would all have been on black record labels eventually. They would either been on Ruthless, or probably Rap a Lot, with Jay Prince or somebody, right? So if they all got on that, eventually they would have been able to probably get a distribution, especially if you had, I mean, even if you had Tupac and NWA on the same, and then obviously Bone Thugs came later, right? So you had like heavy hitters, right? And then they were starting to Death Row. Well, the Death Row East stuff came a little bit later, but like obviously they could have went after some of them artists, right? And so what they ended up doing was, okay, to get back to this. So they send in this stuff, and a lot of this stuff is attacking Time Warner because that's who Death Row was with, that's who Tupac was with, that's who Ice-T was with, was Time Warner, right? So that's who they're going after here. And eventually what ends up happening was, because the Interscope, they sold it to Interscope, who was Time Warner, they attacked Time Warner, and then which eventually ends up happening is Time Warner, and okay, the RICO, go back to the RICO thing real quick, and then I'll go back. So the RICO thing ends up being the same thing that they file once C. Delores Tucker tries to come and tries to convince Sugar to do that other label thing. They file the RICO, and that's how they get her out too, right? But that that was kind of more like kind of a different thing than what Easy had to do, because Easy had to do it basically to defend, because they was trying to come out there all his artists and just shut down his label completely. And you know, and I think that's why when he rebuilt it back up with Bone Thugs and Above the Law and himself, then I think that's why, you know, they end up doing what they did to him, as far as, you know, him dying, you know, being assassinated, whatever you want to call it. So, but okay, so to go back, so they attacked Time Warner, and what Time Warner ends up doing is selling the shares back to Interscope. And this is why Pac wasn't, I think around the time Pac was still in prison. Yeah. So Time Warner sells the shares back to Iovine and Field. Ted Field was the owner. I think it was a deal between them and Atlantic, right? But Atlantic was owned by like a subsidiary of Time Warner. So that's what that was. And then what ends up happening was they sell the records back, and then like once around the time that they make basically a swap, right? So what ends up happening is Dre ends up going to Interscope eventually, and Pac ends up going to Death Row. But Death Row and Interscope are still the same thing, because it's set up basically so that Death Row basically doesn't exist. Death Row was never meant to exist. It was only a front label for them to finesse Dr. Dre basically away from Easy. And once that like maneuver was completed, then they just basically went through and like killed everybody. They killed Tupac. They got Snoop off Death Row. They was able to maneuver him off, and then they was able to go in and put Suge in prison, and they killed all of the they ended up doing like a cleanup of all of the people who was close to Suge afterwards. If you want to go look at like some of, like, I think Mob James and Reggie Jr. talk about some of this stuff basically, where they went through and like a lot of the you know, Mob, what was his brother's name? Well, I don't know if he likes to be called Mob James anymore, but James, I think it's James, his last name might be McDonald or something like that. But James and Buntry, I think it was his brother was Buntry. I forget, I think Alvin McDonald maybe, but yeah, a lot of them ended up getting killed, right? After that time period, right? Like I'm talking about after you know, Suge was in prison and stuff like that. I think why he was still in prison, or maybe shortly after he got out, maybe, but around that time period. And so they sell the shares, right? And then right here you'll see MCA, which is Universal, which is what Jared was talking about, ends up buying the shares back from them, right? And then what ends up happening also is that at the time, Doug Morris was the head. I think he was, I don't know if he's at Time Warner at one point in time, but he ends up maneuvering his position of far as what label he works with. I don't know if he was with Sony at one point. Actually, he was definitely with Sony at another point in time, but he ends up maneuvering, you know, what labels he was, and that's what Seagram, which Jared I think talks about Seagram too. MCA buys back buys the what ends up being Interscope, which was basically buying what was the artist that was originally on Ruthless, which was Dr. Dre was the main artist. And so that was sort of the main thing that they were trying to finesse, right? They were trying to get that ownership back. And what Jared's talking about of the corporate takeover, this was the corporate takeover. It has nothing to do with C. Delores Tucker. What her, commentary on it, what the main thing was their attack of Eazy-E, and the main thing as far as the lyrics was their attack against Pac. They were attacking Pac for conscious lyrics, and they were attacking Eazy-E for his ownership. And what all C. Delores Tucker was providing commentary on stuff that she wasn't a part of, and she didn't really knew what. I mean, I don't know if she knew about it or not, because I think she was like more of like an agent opportunist type individual than she was actually trying to help the situation at all. Like, I don't think she was genuine, literally at all. But obviously, Pac sort of knew what was going on, especially towards the end. Like, he definitely made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. But and the same thing with Easy. But like, that's what they did. They sent in, Suge after Easy, stuff like that. And then, once they ended up getting the operation done of, taking Dr. Dre off the label from Easy's label, and getting him onto Interscope. And then they ended up just, shuffling, Pac around. So, to kind of set up his demise. And then obviously once Suge, kind of completed what they needed him for, then they was about to they tried to wipe him out too. And obviously he had assassination attempts later, obviously, in his life, and obviously they put him in prison again. So, and then all the other people, and this is how Death Row, they set Death Row up like just crazy mad, like just reckless, because like they had like 5 different individuals claim ownership, right? You had Harry O and some of the street people that claimed that they was behind the as you see right here, they had a party where David Kenner and Harry O was supposed to be the main owners, and you had David Kenner himself was trying to run a lot of operations. Suge tried to present himself as the owner of Death Row. You had the where Sony, because I mentioned Sony, one of the other things they tried to do through like the Row, right? Even if they didn't have like the like the direct signing, they what's his name? Not Dick Gregory. Dick Griffey. Right here it is. So Dick Griffey has like this kind of like contractual relationship with Sony, right? So he ends up being the one that helps Dr. Dre, the DOC, and Suge have their own label that ends up that's supposed to be Death Row. So you basically have this street, Harry O, and then you have the mob lawyer type dude Kenner, who's supposed to have ownership, and then you have Suge by himself, and then you obviously have the stuff with DOC, Dre, and Griffey's supposed to be having ownership, right? So the whole thing would have blown up really regardless, because they would have had so many people fighting over ownership, and like, how convoluted the early, like, I don't know what the paperwork really said originally, who would actually have ownership of it, because it was kind of be set up separate, like basically at the same type, time. And like multiple people were being promised, multiple people were trying to put up money and stuff like that for the ownership of it. But, the ultimate goal was what happened was to get it back into the major, corporate takeover. And that's ended up what happening. And Suge actually at one point in time could have been, the person to get the ownership back. And obviously Suge, preached a lot of that ownership stuff. And he was about that. Like, don't get me wrong, but he was used in this situation to end up, and that's why like they had to clean up afterwards, and that's why they went after him and tried to get him killed and put him in prison and stuff like that, because he was coming back for that ownership for real too. So okay, that's the point to be made there. And then so I can just X out. Well, I'm not gonna X out of it in case I need my timeline again. But let me go through some of these So this is the Jungle Bros. This is Tribe. This is some of the early native tongue stuff. Let me see. Here's NWA. I'm gonna put this in order so you could see basically what my point's gonna be here. So let's look at who owned the record label stuff to start out with in the East Coast, early stuff, and then let's look at how that stuff changed once the quote unquote gangster rap stuff started, right? So the dirty rap, the negative rap, the rap that was destroying our community, right? Let's see who had ownership of each one of these, right? And let's see what the real agenda was, right? So if we start, let's just start with the Fear of a Black Planet, because that's the one he mentions that has Fight the Power on it, right? So who owns this, right? Def Jam, right? Okay, well, Def Jam is owned by who? Which obviously today you might say it's Universal Music Group, but back then Rick Rubin. Okay, this is Rick Rubin, obviously. I mean, not. I mean, he's not of African descent. Let's just say. Okay, Russell Simmons obviously was, but obviously Rick Rubin was the. I don't know who had the core ownership, but at least it was co-founded. So Rubin, and then former president of Columbia Records, and then along with Def Jam. So Def Jam was co-founded by Rick Rubin, and Russell Simmons joined shortly after. Okay. So, and who was the distribution by originally? Let's see. So let's go by distribution. Okay, here it should be right here. So it looks from 83 to 84. We're talking about CBS. Okay. So let's go back. Columbia. It says Columbia on here. And Columbia is owned by Sony Music now. Let's go to what who owned this in the the early 90s, late 80s. So this is 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Columbia in 80, in 88. So that's around that time. Was acquired by Sony. Okay. So this is why it becomes an issue, okay? Because Sony through Columbia had the major play in this. So obviously there's no need to try to destroy that because you're already making the money off of it. Regardless of whether or not it's conscious or Fight the Power or not. You could weed that out later. But you already own the money coming in. So Fight the Power is going to make your biggest money, Fight the Power. That's what we're going to put out. That's making the biggest money because you own it. At all levels, right? They owned it, not they. When I say, we're talking about, the community here, right? So there are people of a different community who own majority of the stake in that. Let's put it that way. Jungle Bros, we're looking at Warlock. Does it say Warlock Records? Okay. So Warlock Records is based in New York and was founded in 1985 by Adam Levy, and whose father was Morris Levy. Is a trend being recognized here? Okay, we're going to look at the trend being recognized here. We're seeing who was the music stole from, where was the corporate takeover? Where was the corporate takeover, and who was taking over what? Let's get this straight right here. Tribe. This is another one of those. And I'm not gonna get into like the less popular people. I'm gonna get to the ones that probably we're putting out the albums that people probably actually might have been listening to back then. So let me just look at like low end theory was I assuming, or Midnight Marauders. At least one of those was big before. And then Label Jive. Founded by a black, no, not black, British. Okay, a South African. So a South African born British billionaire. Don't need to go much further with that. Now, let's get to the ones who were being targeted by the government first and let's just get this straight first. I'll go ahead and play this little clip of a video where the homie Willie D is talking about this situation on Vlad. I'm probably gonna get flagged for this, but
was basically, staging
now what he's going to talk about is before C. Delores Tucker
a campaign against hip hop, against gangster rap. Mm-hmm. And wasn't the Ghetto Boys included in that?
This is 18.
Yeah. Okay. Tupac was sort of the main target of that, but the Ghetto Boys was included with a few.
Vlad's getting this wrong. That's why Willie D, like, if you look at Willie D, started rolling his eyes, roll his eyes at Vlad, because Vlad never really knows what he's talking about.
The main target of that, but the Ghetto Boys was included with a few other artists as well, right?
Well, they was targeting everybody. Everybody that was hot at that time. Really, Ghetto Boys, they were after us before Tupac. You got.
Oh, okay.
We were before Tupac.
Right.
So.
But this was before C. Delores Tucker too.
They came after us in like 89, 90 is when they came after us. I think they came.
Okay. I don't think I need to play this whole thing.
Pac somewhere around 92 or something like.
Right. That's when the Ray Davis situation happened and the cop killer controversy and stuff popped up. And then that was before C. Delores Tucker too. So, let me go ahead with this real quick. So. Ghetto Boys. We'll just hit the Ghetto Boys up real quick. We'll go to the Ghetto Boys. So the Ghetto Boys, let's look at their album. 88 or 89. I don't know what album they actually went after. But the Ghetto Boys were signed to Rap-A-Lot. And Rap-A-Lot is a hip-hop record label founded by James Prince. Okay. James Prince. Do we know who James Prince is? James Prince. Right? Jay Prince. We know Jay Prince. Okay? You see it. We're going to see the trend here, right? They're attacking rap music now. Vehemently with this gangster rap controversy stuff, right? It's the lyrics, right? It's about the lyrics. It's about the fact that the corporations are taking over and putting out bad lyrics to, negatively influence children in the wrong direction. Here. That's what it's all about. No, that's not what it's really about. It's about attacking these labels and really, really attacking the labels that are black owned. Okay? Forget the subsidiary stuff and who is distributing, right? Because you got to start where you got to start, right? You're not going to get the distribution deals as far as an independent artist, right? Because Jared also tried to talk about, where's, independent artists and stuff like, come on, bro. If you're an independent artist, you still have to do distribution, right? You have to start there until you can start collecting your money up to be able to put out distribution. Because distribution networks, that's the rough part, right? And back then, they had to play at it. If these records would have been labels, they would just be able to build on their own, right? And they would have been able to get all the artists. Then eventually, they probably would have had enough revenues to try to make plays at, distribution networks and stuff like that. Eventually, or they could have just had independent, and they would have been making a larger chunk of the money just coming out the record straight up, right? And you could get into what happened after the corporate takeover and stuff. They started doing streaming and started attacking revenues and making money off CDs and stuff like that. And then obviously they control YouTube and they control certain streaming services and stuff like that. That's a new ball game, right? After that, right? But that's after the gangster rap controversy, though. Okay. So who else does Willie D mention? 2 Live Crew. So, 2 Live Crew. I don't think I talked about 2 Live Crew yet. So let's go as nasty as they want to be, because we know that's one of the ones that they went after. You know what I mean? 2 Live Crew. Atlantic. Okay. They probably handle the distribution. But who owns the label? Luke Records. Okay. For the trend here, Luke Records is an American record label formed in 1985 by Luther Campbell. A little bit different looking than Rick Rubin and the British billionaires and the Jamaican dude. I don't know if I showed him or not, but who owns some of the East Coast stuff, right? The East Coast New York type stuff, who was owned by a certain, set subset of people or group of people, complexion or whatever you want to, whatever you want to say it, however you want to put it. Okay, so we got James Prince, Luther Campbell, so far getting at NWA, and what did I do with the NWA thing? The FBI. Okay, so I already talked about the F the police. Right, the FBI sent him a letter. There's also a video. I have it on downloaded. Hold up. Okay, so I have it downloaded. Jerry Heller breaks down, talks about music business, Eazy-E, NWA Dre, where he talks about a situation where Eazy getting confronted by the police or whatever. And then he talks about, like, I don't know if it was him or someone else, maybe Ice Cube, or when I end up talking about the one where they got stormed by the police because they weren't supposed to be able to perform the song and all this other stuff, right? The controversy happened, over songs like this, right? And here's the letter if you want to come read that. Like, the FBI sent him a letter. They were trying to shut him down. Like, another thing to keep in mind with the NWA and Ruthless stuff is that Jerry Heller helped them get record deals and stuff like that. But they didn't want to, the corporations originally didn't want to mess with the music really at all anyway. They didn't want to give them a chance even, anyway, but, they ended up being able to make their money off of it. And certain people who were able to make their money off of it, they were able to get like a kind of into the industry because, they ended up, signing, but they owned the labels though, right? And, they were able to get help getting the distribution deals to make the money, and then they started attacking these people. Over the lyrics and stuff. That was the like kind of guys, or the kind of like the trick to get into it. And that had obviously other points and stuff that might get into in a minute anyway. But that's the NWA. Let me get to the NWA. I mean, I don't even have to discuss the NWA, but so we can keep up a little trend here of the type of people, the type of record labels that they were going after for the gangster rap controversy and the cop killing controversy. Who were they going after? Who were they not going after? We're going to keep it 100% real on when we're talking about the corporate takeover. So Ruthless Records was founded by Eric Wright. And obviously we all know Eazy-E. So I mean, that one doesn't really have to be discussed too much. And then a thing to keep in mind with NWA, this is pretty important. Let me get the what was the first album? We'll just go straight out of Compton. It wasn't, but wait, that's a single. I need the album. So Priority, right? And Priority is the ones that ended up going after Ice Cube originally, but we could kind of ignore that Ice Cube situation for now. But Priority back then was more of a smaller, say 85 to 96, but they were handed a distribution. This was direct their label to their label just for the distribution. And what ended up happening was in 90 it's not gonna be one here. In 95, Eazy-E ends up doing a deal. It's gonna be on Bone Thugs with Relativity. Okay. So he ends up going to a different indie label. So that's important to keep in mind, right? And Relativity is who Eazy-E ended up negotiating a contract with to get a lot of the other stuff released. I think was Bone Thugs, Eternal, E1990 Eternal was on Relativity Records. And they, although it was reported 785, 2. I don't know if they had like a higher up, because the parent company is Sony now, but I don't know who it was back then, if it was still Sony or not. But anyway, he ended up doing that deal, the Relativity. Okay, So let me see if there's anything else I need to discuss as far as the labels and individuals they were attacking, or would I have to go straight into the gangster rap and then Snoop? I think that should be good, right? Because that's the core individuals who got mainly targeted. Besides Ice-T, who I think a lot of that was just because of this song "Cop Killer," and they could have just used that as a jump off point. But that was again that was after they was already targeting these other groups for the lyrics. So let's go to. Okay, so before we get to the Snoop thing and see Delores Tucker entering the conversation, basically, we have Slain Trooper's widow Sue's rap singer. So this is when the you see the state trooper get shot, and they go after, again, this is going after Time Warner and stuff like that. She's suing rap singer and Time Warner over, and the Time Warner was the main target throughout the whole thing, because Time Warner, like I said, ended up selling their shares, and then it was bought by the people who ended up taking over the rap music, right? The Universal. It was MCA back then. It was bought by Seagram, and the dude from Seagram, the family from Seagram, anytime some stuff goes down, right? They're involved in some stuff usually. If you go see who was the owner of Seagram and some of the family, some of the stuff that they end up being involved in, whatever. That's what it is. It is what it is, right? So so obviously they got their Pac. Pac's music's being censored. And then Delores Tucker enters after Snoop. So let's go to the gangster rap thing real quick. So who actually invented the concept of gangster rap? And I think I exited out of the Willie D video, but he talks about how back then, because they were targeted basically the entire time, throughout the whole 90s, until they basically did the complete takeover, and then somewhere like after they kind of got it all taken care of, and then they like magically it just disappeared. That there's no more controversy. So magically, right? Just out of nowhere, no more controversy as far as rap lyrics now. Besides like little whispers, every now and then we have to just do something anti-black. You have to say something about rap music, but just in general, there's no like gangster rap controversy that exists today, like there used to be. So okay, gangster rap, where did it come from? And it looks like it says the weekly cover story. What up? But they wanted to call it reality rap, right? They wanted the artists were actually pushing back at that time of being called gangster rap, because they properly understood that was being used as like an anti-black tactic to demonize a lot of the music. And another thing was that, look at, Tupac was being targeted at the time for conscious music, straight up. Tupacalypse Now was not a quote unquote gangster rap album. It was more of a conscious album, basically, almost. And he put those elements in all of his early records until he went to prison, right? Like, in pretty much every single one of his early recordings, he had like, he started that strategy where you hear him talk about, like he shared with Biggie, do your songs for the streets, right? And then do your conscious songs, and then do your like radio singles, and stuff like that, right? So do your street songs, do your radio singles, then you could like work on your conscious records and stuff for the ladies and stuff like that, right? You work, your different stuff in there, right? To appeal to different groups of people, right? To get, your point across. And obviously Pac had, like the soldier stories, he had the, keep your head up. He had the changes, actually, which I don't think came, I don't know when that first came out, but, cause I know it was recorded like early on, but then it ended up, let me see. I want to say that because this was one of his most conscious songs, one of his most popular. It was released in 98, but it was recorded in 92, it looks like. So, yeah, but because like the original version of Changes, was recorded early on, and I don't think that was on any of his albums, right? A lot of this, like I said, his stuff was being censored. They were screwing him over. He ended up getting sued. That wasn't even his only thing. He had an incident with the police in Atlanta. He got beat up by the police. Police brutality. They beat him up pretty bad after early on with this album. and he was making, like I said, he's making, you know, all those songs, and he does an interview where like, you know, he kind of knows the guy, kind of like, you know, whatever, but he like I could go to the interview real quick where he talks about you know, them going after him, the Chuck Phillips interview.
Get up and I get around.
And did he go? He went to the Jack the Rapper thing, right?
Yeah, we to a conference.
Yeah. Like, how do you see yourself as an artist? Like,
I don't know what to say.
the other people Brenda's got pretty eloquently about a lot of the issues like social concerns, like Papa Song and Part-Time Mother, Brenda's Got a Baby, Keep Your Head Up, stuff like that. Talk a little bit about that, like, you know, the idea that people seem to focus only on the violent stuff.
Right. So they even in the media recognize like the fact that, you know, Tupac's out here doing all these like conscious, you know, songs, these politically motivated songs and all this other type stuff. And, you know, they're like in the media, they're focused on like all he's doing is like, you know, this, you know, other stuff. Right. And, you know, he does change up, and like you can watch, like you watch my videos, you'll see like kind of his attitude, like how it shifts, you know, when he goes to prison and then when he gets on death row, and how, you know, and you could obviously use your own, kind of thoughts as far as why you think that might have had it happen, you know, the type of environment, and what was going on at death row and stuff like that. What is, you know, it is what it is. I think this is from '93 when he gets interviewed, but I think that might be, I don't know if that could either be before or after C. Delores Tucker. I'm not sure, because but regardless, you know, they're conscious of the fact that they're attacking him for his music when in fact he's doing a lot of conscious music. He's doing a lot of, you know, music that's, you know, for the streets, that's influencing the streets, and this, you know, people, you know, obviously are reaching out to him. Like you could even, like when you watch my videos, you'll see where people was reaching out to him. You know, I listen to Brenda's Got a Baby, and you know, he said that really, you know, touched him when he's in prison, you know, and kept him going because, you know, people was talking about, you know, how much his music helped them, you know, on the conscious type, you know, level, too, right? And then obviously, like, you know, tons of his songs, or, you know, even like So Many Tears, you know, you got Dear Mama all the way on, you know, all the way on Me Against the World, right? Like this entire time he's doing nothing but, you know, a mixture of, you know, positive music and stuff like that. It's, but he's like the main target of, you know, the controversies and, you know, presidents and vice presidents and candidates and stuff, talking about, you know, he has no role in society and like we got to take his, you know, album off the shelf and stuff like that, right? But so weekly cover of LA, it's an article. Wait, did I already open this? Okay, yeah. So I already had this open, but you know, rap music, I think this is where they use gangster rap. This is in '89. And then like you can't say that none of the artists ever used the term gangster rap, because it does say right here that Dr. Dre claimed he never used it, but describes music. But before NWA came out, there was nobody out here doing gangster rap. But this was in an interview in '91. So the whole gangster rap narrative in general of it even being called gangster rap was pushed by the media, and then it ended up getting just picked up, and then, you know, it just started being gangster rap, gangster rap, gangster rap, gangster rap, gangster rap, to frame it, you know, like I said, like, and it's completely anti-black, like that's what they're out there doing, you know, gang activity, right, to associate it with gang activity. But at the same time, like I said, you got to keep in mind, Tupac was working to, you know, against the gangsta, you know, and I said, and still today, people was working, you know, to try to, you know, OGs and stuff like that are trying to, you know, go back and, you know, teach like younger, you know, kids about, you know, gangs and like, you know, getting organized and getting conscious and stuff like that, about the streets and about their situation and stuff like that. And that's been going on, all the way back then. So it wasn't like that, you know, just because people either making a certain type of music or was involved in a particular type of lifestyle, that like they weren't on their own. Like they needed Steve Delores Tucker to show up to be like, you know, hey, this is damaging, and hey, what? No, come on, bro. Like if you're not helping the situation, what are you doing? So, okay, this is the one. Okay. So now we're gonna get into when Steve Delores Tucker finally pops up. So you had all this stuff. Let me go back to my timeline just so we get clear on what all has happened up to the point where Steve Delores Tucker finally comes out, right? Okay. So up until this point, we had them going after the Ghetto Boys, going after Two Live Crew, going after Rap a Lot, going after NWA, going after Ice T, but mainly going after Tupac. In the 90s, that was after they already went after these other people. But going after Tupac, once he started, showing up with his political stuff, then they started going after him. And then once they started, he goes to, I guess before he goes to prison, now we're up to the point where now they come up with Deep Cover, and then obviously you have Chronic and Doggy Style. And that would be before C. Delores Tucker comes out. So now we're going into that. So after all these years of going after people for doing basically, not all, okay, let's be honest. Okay, not all of it was conscious, but Tupac specifically was. Some of the other ones were just black-owned labels. And I already went over what Death Row was really about, right? They took a lot of the artists off the label and off Ruthless. Basically, just kind of like went through and swept, everything off Ruthless besides Above the Law and Easy. And then they shifted over to Death Row, which was able to serve as our front label until it's able to dissipate everything, get Jerry back to Interscope, and basically completely take over, the music after that. And obviously after that, they still still attacked people trying to own their own stuff, right? It's not like it stopped. Okay. This is another point that I forgot to mention. When I mentioned the East Coast stuff, this is a point that I forgot to mention. This was a very, very, very important point. This is probably one of the most important points I'm going to make in the video. I might have to re-edit this back to the beginning. But one of the very, very first conscious type stuff was KRS and Boogie Down Productions. So Boogie. I probably got to put on Boogie Down Productions. Okay. This is very, very, very important, right? Because remember earlier I pointed out that most of the record labels during the time when the East Coast were owned, and most like if you look at Def Jam or something like that, a lot of people were directly on that type of stuff as far as the big artists. KRS-One being obviously one of the biggest artists. This is very important because Scott LaRock. Okay. Scott LaRock specifically during this time period was trying to push for Boogie Down Productions, obviously, which was a label, to own, have a bigger ownership role in the in like their music for their music, right? That's a big, big, big deal that you cannot leave out of this conversation. This is probably one of the biggest deals you cannot leave out of conversation. Because like I showed earlier, all of them East Coast, or vast majority of them East Coast records that were big, that were whatever, maybe fit into the category of that you want, that's not gangster rap or whatever. A lot of them were owned by a specific group of individuals who were not black. Okay, let's just be honest about what it is. And then when there was one that was about to be, we saw exactly what happened to the individual. Okay. And then that same thing consistently happened to individuals throughout hip hop history. To Easy, to Pac. People could argue Jam Master Jay. We still ain't figured, like, I don't even know, did they solve the Jam Master Jay case yet? You know what I mean? There's been a lot of individuals, who've been on that type of energy. And this is important too, because afterwards, right? After the, a lot of this starts to clear, like we saw the same things happen with, similar things happened with Irv Gotti. They had a case with Murder Inc. You had issues with who am I thinking of? That Suge. I think that's, what's the other label I'm thinking of? Oh, Rockefeller. Okay, Dame Dash. I don't know how I forgot that. Dame Dash, right? You had Dame have issues with what Jay-Z did, leaving, and ended up taking their label and giving that a lot of that back, after he left, right? That was sort of that situation, right? In all these situations, you have individuals who are able to, get, pulled off. And the reason why J Master Jay is sort of important is because he was working with 50 Cent sort of a little bit too, but that's kind of another type issue, right? But regardless, you had, KRS and you had Scott LaRock. You know, one of them gets, you know, whatever happened to him. The other one goes. Then you had Easy and Dre. Happens to Easy. Dre goes into, you know, what he knows, what he ends up going into, right? And obviously Snoop and you know, Eminem later. And you had obviously Suge and Dre. Suge. What happens to Suge happens to Suge. Dre, obviously. Then you had you know, Dame and Jay. Same deal, right? And this is kind of repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated through, you know, history. Not every time are they, you know, assassinated. Sometimes they're targeted, sometimes they're put in prison, sometimes they get lawsuits put against them, sometimes they just, you know, their artists are taken away. You know, but to varying degrees in hip hop. And I mean, I'm not even up on game. A lot of y'all, younger, you know, people who follow this stuff today probably are a lot more up on, you know, what's happening to a lot of these younger artists because they're dying, like, you know what I mean? And I can almost guarantee that a lot of these young cats, because, you know, they came up and they know about ownership of masters. They know about that stuff today, right? Not all of them, but a lot of these young cats they're savvy, especially, you know, even the ones that are street savvy. They know, like, you know, own your masters, try to own your work, try to be independent, right? That type of mindset got, you know, ingrained, like, you know, because, you know, people, you know, talk about that now. We got the internet and stuff like that now, right? A lot of information is out there of, you know, people saying that from back in the day, talking about, yeah, own your masters, own your, you know, publishing, own your music, be independent, right? Don't just be signed to these labels and these bad deals and stuff, right? And you get a lot of these artists to end up, you know, following that path, you know what I mean? I mean, like Nipsey Hussle or something like that, right? It's like, I mean, you know, that people talk about that situation, we know what that was. But, you know, a lot of these artists end up, you know, following a particular path, right? You know, some ends up happening to them. And, you know, even regardless of whether they follow that path or not, right? You know, a lot of these artists, because it doesn't always have to be like that. Another example from back in the day was, you know, Big and Puff. And that didn't necessarily have to be the case where Big was trying to do all this independent, you know, his own music and stuff like that, right? It just had to do with the fact that he was signed to Puff, and Puff was doing the wrong stuff, and Puff was into that, you know, wrong side stuff, like, you know, there's certain other individuals I mentioned who got pulled, you know, in a particular direction, right? And Big ended up being, if you want to say, a sacrifice. You know what I mean? They did what they did to Pac, and then Big got caught up, you know, on the end, like the wrong end from, you know, later on, right? And that's, you know that is what it is. And obviously you see where Puffy is today, you know what I mean, because of that. You know what I mean? A lot of them things have connections, right? So you had Dre being involved in what you know, ended up happening, right, to Easy. And then you had, you know, the Pac situation, and you had Dre where he's at. Then obviously you had the you know, the situation with you know, Big and stuff like that. And then you have, you know, Puff where he's at, Diddy. So, I mean, and all these little strange situations, and then obviously Dame, and then you had this situation with Jay-Z, and then you see where he's at. I mean, you know, there's opportunities where it seems like, you know, the devil comes and says, you know, what would you like to do with your soul here? And when people make particular decisions that potentially could be, you know, against certain individuals, the community, etc., it seems like, you know, those are the ones that end up elevating, you know, to a particular, past a particular plateau and status in the industry, right? So Snoop coming into the game was straight up with that from the beginning, right? That's why this is important. That's why I see the Delores Tucker ends up becoming important, because this is very vitally important too that you have to mention. This cannot have been a coincidence. Could not have been a coincidence. So Snoop became the most wanted man in America. So this is about his case probably and stuff like that. I'm not going to go into that really right now. If you want to look up what happened to his case, just watch the video, whatever. I don't know what part it's going to be in, but one of the videos, the parts that goes through some information about his case. You could Google the family of the guy, maybe that he killed, or information about the guy he killed, or one that he killed, but he was on trial for murder. the guy who ended up dying, who the murder trial was basically over his death. And then you could look at the case, look at the issues that they had with, potentially with the evidence in the case, potential police involvement in losing evidence for the case, or losing evidence, you know what I mean? In the case that ended up, him getting being found not guilty or whatever. But really one of the important things to point out is that after the during the deep cover, this was during the cop killer controversy, and this is the part I want to read. So it says Snoop's slickness was in many ways what made him scarier than Ice-T, Tupac, or Ice Cube. Rappers had been under fire for anti-cop lyrics, but somehow Dr. Dre's deep cover missed all the controversy. As Torre wrote in the New York Times back in '93, both songs gained popularity in the summer of 1992. Talking about deep cover and cop killer. But Snoop song Deep Cover, 187 Undercover Cop, one has to know that in Los Angeles police terminology, 187 means homicide. I mean, you couldn't figure that one out. Cops couldn't figure that one out, right? None of the cops that ended up, the Austin fraternity of police or whatever, they ended up becoming aware of, the cop killer, right? Song by Body Count, which wasn't even a rap song. It was like a rock, fusion, indie rock type song. It wasn't even a rap song. But they couldn't figure it out. That's what it was. He was so slick that they couldn't figure out what 187 on Undercover Cop meant, but they could figure out what cop killer meant. Come on, bro. And you could blame Tupac's album that just happens to mention, a cop and situations of, like growing up in the hood or whatever else. This is give them that when they missed it, right? So they missed that. Okay, cool. But anyway, so you have Murder Was the Case on Doggy Style. This video might be 2 hours, but okay, let's look at what the lyrics are about on this, right? Okay, so this is murder. He's on the trial for murder. And if you want to go watch the thing, go watch the video to Murder Was the Case, which came out a little bit later. If you just want some more insight into this, right? So, let me see, skit. Let's just go, okay. Dear God, I wonder, can you save me? I can't die. My boo-boo's about to have my baby, right? Okay, but it says, a voice spoke to me and it slowly started saying, right? This is about Murder Was the Case. You have to keep in mind, right? So you assume that most of the lyrics would be about how he was framed, for a murder. He was set up. He didn't really commit the murder. Cops were coming after him, or the law was coming after him. They were coming after him and trying to put him in prison for something he didn't commit. You assume that's what all the lyrics would be about, right? And Murder Was the Case. But no, right? In the video, okay. But I think it was a long video, like a movie. But okay, voice spoke to me and slowly started saying, "Bring your lifestyle to me, I'll make it better." What does that sound like? Okay. How long will I live? Eternal life and forever. Like if we're trying to avoid the Illuminati type stuff, right? If we're trying to avoid the Illuminati sell your soul type stuff, and like the quote unquote conspiracy theories, if we're trying to avoid the conspiracy theories, it's like the worst way to do it, right? So the lyrics in this song, right? Bring your lifestyle to me to make it better. How long will I live? Eternal life and forever. But will I be to G what I was? I'll make your life better than you could imagine or ever dreamed of. So relax your soul. Let me take control. Close your eyes, my son. My eyes are closed. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to say much here. Okay. I mean, I don't know what I got to say there. I think the lyrics, basically, what that's about, speaks for itself. But okay, Doggy Style comes out. You have this individual, as we already see, just missed the cop killer controversy, right? Which could have probably had a huge impact on his album, right? Right? I mean, you'd assume, which his album exploded. This is one of like the biggest albums of this era. He exploded into superstardom at the same time they were like trying to keep Pac completely down, right? This is very important too. At the same time they were trying to keep Pac down, someone, with these type of lyrics and this type of like real controversy, right? Because Pac, they just said he raped a woman, and we all know that was bogus, right? Completely bogus. Completely bogus, right? That case. This case, I mean, regardless if you want to say it's completely bogus or not, I mean, it's a little bit different a situation, right? Because even what they were accusing Pac of and what he went to prison for was basically forcibly touching her butt. That was like literally the charges. That was literally what he was on trial for. And got years, whatever, for. Like, let's be serious, right? That compared to murder. I mean, obviously this was a big controversy at the time. And obviously controversy helps sell records. And obviously after Tupac had his controversy, he ended up selling, once he eventually got out. But then at that point, we saw what happened, like where the situation he was in with Death Row, which obviously wasn't a great situation. Which, I mean, it never was a great situation for him being on Interscope either. But, because it's basically the same thing anyway. Obviously he was trying to, do what he could do to put conscious music out at that point in time. And obviously had the avenue been available for him to have went to Easy or have went to, these other ones, and they weren't like, doing all these other stuff to put him in jail and set him up and, whatever they was doing to him in jail, torturing him or, mentally, and, they're trying to take all his money and stuff like that. That takes a toll on you. A lot of people don't put themselves in that position, right? They wanted like, Monday morning quarterback, all Pac's decisions, which is perfectly fine. We got to learn from his decisions. We got to see what he did wrong, what he did right. That's perfectly fine. But when you put yourself in a situation, you got to say, what I made the same decisions. And with that type of pressure and, what they're coming after you with, this after this after this after this after this after this, these cops coming after you, getting shot at all the time, getting a setup for, trial after trial. You're in court you're court to the studio. All your money's going into that. Whatever money you have left, after they're coming after it all. And, eventually, you reach a point where a breaking point, or something, and you're not always going to make sound decisions. But, if he would have been able to sign with the Easy or been able to sign with the Jay Prince, I think Spice One did an interview about this recently, where someone asked him, who was this one? Or the Dialogue, maybe, where they asked him, you think he'd still be alive if he was signed with Jay Prince or, someone else? And he said, I don't know, maybe he would have, or whatever. But, that's definitely a big, point to be made, about what was going on during this time. So, you had Snoop, and then after Snoop's album was released, then you had C. Delores Tucker, because what you'll see, and I'll play a little bit of this, C. Delores Tucker is,
available to any child to go in and buy with the album and with a record. That has got to stop. You want to know why I'm on the warpath? When I saw this, I said, that's it. We march again, and we're going to keep on marching and demonstrating the truth stuff.
Let me rewind this, because we're getting the context here, right? We're not going to just give our opinion without giving any of the data, the analysis, the facts, or whatever else. I guess not data in this situation, because it's all, live events, no numbers, but we're talking about, we're giving the sources, we're giving the facts here. What C. Delores Tucker was really talking about, it's a corporate takeover, right? I mean, she might have mentioned the corporate takeover, but we could see what she just said just here. And I think this is the like album art from Doggy Style, and like probably insert or whatever to CDs or whatever.
Child to go in and buy with the album and with a record. That has got to stop. You want to know why I'm on the warpath? When I saw this, that has got to stop. You want to know why I'm on the warpath? When I saw this, I said, that's it.
You want to know why I'm on the warpath? When I saw that. Okay. Now is that a coincidence? We know who Snoop is. We know who is being targeted. We know who they set up to blow up. Is it a coincidence that she just magically on her own? I want to let people reach their own conclusion about this. Is it just a coincidence that magically on her own, when it came with the Snoop Dogg stuff, that she just went to the record store? She went to the, or her, I don't know her if she has kids or grandkids or whatever at the time. Somebody comes to her with the Snoop Dogg insert of the to the album and shows her the Snoop Dogg album and all the viral pictures and suggestive lyrical content and Doggy Style, and then she just magically at a time just something pops in her head like, what I gotta do? I gotta go convince everybody that corporations are trying to take over hip hop. Or do you think someone else was like, hey, we're doing this gangster rap controversy thing. You know what I mean? You went in on it from your Democratic perspective because it was mostly Republicans before that time. I think, well, actually, no, we take that back. I think the early on there were like when they did like the parental advisory, I think they, obviously the Clintons was in on it too, right? So it wasn't like they all played into it, but it was more like a right wing thing because you remember the Clintons though were more of a right leaning like New Democrat, right? So the New Democrats, but she's more maybe. I don't know if you want to consider like Jesse Jackson went. I mean, I don't know where she stood politically. I don't know if she voted for Clinton's. A lot of them people probably did, but regardless, she's coming. You want in on this, and then she kept the controversy going, attacking the art. She attacked the artist here. Let's be honest, what she was attacking. She was attacking the lyrics. She was attacking the artist. Okay, she might have made the point about whether or not they had corporate takeover or whatever. But this was the corporate takeover. How did she knew that? How? Ask yourself like, how did she she came to the conclusion on her own that when she walked into the record store and bought the Snoop album, for whatever reason, she doesn't like the music, but she walked into who gave her the Snoop album? Who came to her with the Snoop album and said, hey, I think you should take a look at this. Come on, bro. Who let her on national TV, right? Because I have a lot of stuff that I want to say about a lot of stuff. You probably have a lot of stuff that you want to say about a lot of stuff. No one's giving you a national platform to go out there on news, radio, TV, C-SPAN, Senate hearings to discuss the points that you have about anything, especially rap music. They don't care. So how did she get in here? You always got to remember in politics about the post-turtle. The post-turtle, right? If you don't know about the post-turtle, you're driving down a country road and you see a turtle on top of a post laying on its back, right? And you just know, if you don't know anything about the situation, you just know that someone had to put him there. And he probably was down. Right? The post turtle. Let me see if it comes up on Wikipedia, the post turtle. Remember the post turtle in politics, always. Post turtle is a phrase. An old rancher is talking about politics with a young man from the city. He compares a politician to a post turtle. The young man doesn't understand and asks him what is a post turtle is. And it said the old man says, when you're driving down a country road and you see a fence post and a turtle balanced on top, that's a post turtle. He didn't get up there by himself. He didn't get up there by himself. He doesn't belong there. He definitely doesn't belong there. You wonder who put him there, right? And he can't get anything done while he's up there. Can't get anything done while he's up there. And you just want to help the poor thing down. See, Delores Tucker said just let it, when people was like, FC Delores Tucker, she should have just went away. Just help her down. You want to help him down, but you didn't put him there. Only the people that put him there can get him down. You know what I mean? Unless you want revolution. But the post-turtle. That's what C. Delores Tucker is, a post-turtle. That might be the title of the video. C. Delores Tucker, the post-turtle. Okay. And you haven't watched you can watch the whole video. If you think I'm leaving context out as far as what she was talking about, I really don't care about that. Because I think the situation speaks for itself as far as what it was. Right? The point she was making about the corporate takeover, she was post-turtle and she didn't have anything to do with that. What was she going to do? She didn't own a record label. So why was she attacking? They were attacking already the black record labels, and she continued that attack, right? She continued it mainly against Death Row, but she went after Pac. And I think at one point she had a lawsuit against Pac for mentioning her in a record against Pac. And maybe it's the state because he was already passed. I think the lawsuit went into when I don't know if she filed it after he passed away because it was something off. It might have been All Eyes on Me or Machiavelli. So I don't know what specific one she filed a lawsuit against, or maybe all of it. But it had to be really rough that time. And obviously, Tupac got assassinated, so it had to be against his estate at that point. That she ended up filing. I'm pretty sure C. Delores Tucker. I'm not supposed to have that stuff wrong. There it goes. C. Delores Tucker sues Tupac. Oh wait, what is this? Google Groups. What the heck? Okay, $10 million defamation suit against Tupac rap labels. 90. This is 97. I don't know when it was filed. Obviously, All Eyes on Me. All Eyes on Me was the one. But yeah, come on, bro. I mean, and then obviously it was still against Tupac. And it was against Snoop, but like the grounds was already set. And you see if they did the same thing with Snoop. They did it with Biggie. Biggie got promoted for all his lyrics. So you can see there is this corporate takeover and they are promoting this particular lyrics during this time frame. But the background stuff that's going on behind the scenes and C. Delores Tucker's role in demonizing and helping them demonize the record label, specifically Eazy-E, because Eazy-E had issues with C. Delores Tucker too, attacking and stuff like that. And then obviously because when you attack the music, what you're basically doing is there is no other context other than anti-blackness, because you have no other context to really work with. What is she going to do? I mean, who's like the corporations are going to give up the music to what? Like, because she said, like, C. Delores Tucker is going to come and say, hey, you can't have a corporate takeover of rap. And corporations will be like, you're right, here, you take it over. Come on, bro. Like, no. They was already trying to take over rap way before she had anything to say. Pre-Doggy Style. They already had the gangster rap controversy pre-Doggy Style. But she magically pops up once they get their people in the game, once they get their agents in the game, the people they have control over in the game, releasing the particular types of music, then magically she pops up. Once they start gaining control already, she pops up. And then she pops up, and then they continue. They kill Eazy, they kill Pac. They put Suge in jail, in prison. They do all the cleanup on the streets and stuff. Come on, bro. They do what they did with because she was trying to get them to sell this stuff too, right? So even in the success, what did she get them to do? She got them to sell the shares of Time Warner from Interscope, which was their goal anyway. That was the corporation's goal anyway. That's what they already wanted to do, was to get Time Warner to sell the shares to back, and then they got the shares sold back. And then once Time Warner got the shares sold back, then they shifted everything over to Interscope, and Interscope signed a subsidiary to MCA Universal. And obviously, I don't know if I covered in my other videos about the connections between MCA and the mob, which got discussed before, like back in the day, like in the 80s or something. I think it was Dan Modella or something like that. It was his name. Did a book on Ronald Reagan, the mob, and MCA. And Seagram obviously was into that, and that was at the same time. Look, at the exact same time that Dr. Dre signed with them, which was their whole goal, which is to get Dr. Dre, because he was the main asset. He was the one that every time that Dr. Dre produced the album, it was freaking a banger. It was a hit. It was selling like crazy. Doggy Style, Chronic, 2001, Eminem's albums, 50 Cent, all the way up to till today. I mean, even. Some Dr. Dre does a project or is connected to something, it's big. They said like the halftime show or something like that was big. It's how it all, whatever. But yeah, so you got your goal. They sold the shares back and they sold them right back to the company. Like, what is it going to sell them to you? Like, I mean, even like I said, already said, like if she would have had like a conscious rap label, I mean, what the heck would that have done? There was already conscious rap labels. They were just owned by white folks. I mean, what the heck? I mean, and any one of the ones, they could have independent ones, indie ones. I mean, it wasn't going to help anything. I mean, it was just like there was no possibility for her to serve any other purpose other than to demonize black people and give more ammunition to the far right reactionaries who were trying to frame these ghetto black kids who could be dehumanized. Like, look, they can't even freaking make music without freaking calling their women this or talking about shooting each other and killing each other and doing drugs and all that other stuff, right? Which when obviously they can make probably one of the best songs on this is "Hand of a Dead Body" by Scarface, where he addresses this in the song, right? So you can make movies and TV shows about all this stuff, but we can't discuss that in our music, right? So you can make a Clint Eastwood movie or freaking Matt Damon, and a movie can go kill every single person in the whole movie and be gangster. And you can make all these mafia movies and Scarface and all these snorting cocaine and doing all this drug, but we can't make music about it. You know what I mean? It's not okay for us to make music about it, but you can make movies about it. You can make TV shows about it. You could make TV shows about all this sex and drugs and violence and whatever else you want to make, movies and Netflix, series, mini series, YouTube videos, or whatever else you want to make, podcasts about all this stuff, talking all this stuff. You know what I mean? The police can do what they want to do, the military can do what they want to do, killing all whatever. But black people make a couple songs about their lifestyle or having a good time or party, and all of a sudden it's an agenda, and even if it is an agenda, people will still have their expression. Even if music was about, even if black people owned the music 100%, right, and it wasn't a corporate takeover, they were still going to do the same type of music because they were doing it already before with Two Live Crew, with Too Short. They was already making music, that was geared toward those type of activities or whatever. Like, come on, because people was partying. That's part of the culture too. You know what I mean? And when people get arguments about hip hop all the time, that's part of the culture too. The partying is part of the culture, right? And this is when it was January '94. It looks like this speech was. If you want to watch the whole thing on C-SPAN, I don't know if she started before that or not, but this is when this one pops up. Okay, let me go. And this is a point too that I wanted to make about Jared Ball trying to say, oh, there's a corporate takeover of hip hop, and like hip hop had this conscious core, and they took it over. I mean, this pretty much just defeats any point made about that.
I just told you a little while ago, these leaders that they call leaders, this included Lena Horne, this included Dick Gregory, and this included comedians, comics, trumpet players, baseball players. Show me in the white community where a comedian is a white leader. Show me in the white community where a singer is a white leader, or a dancer or a trumpet player is a white leader. These aren't leaders. These are puppets and clowns that have been set up over the white community and over the black community by the white community, and have been made celebrities and usually say exactly what they know that the white man wants to hear.
Okay. And it doesn't matter about the context, whether they even say good things. It doesn't matter if, rap music or, whatever. These are celebrities, bro. These aren't, these aren't intellectuals. These aren't organizers. These aren't activists, right? That's not their job. That's not what they like. They're expressing themselves, right? Good, bad, maybe as with an agenda, without an agenda. But it really doesn't matter. It's music. They're expressing themselves. It's about even if they were that's not their job. That's not what you can't look there for that. You got to look to your actual leaders. You can't look to celebrities to save you. And I think that's like one of the major points that just needs to be made in general, right? If you are, a revolutionary, if you are trying to, make, fundamental changes in society, if you're trying to overthrow white supremacy, racism, capitalism, or whatever else, and you're looking at well, what can rap music do towards this? Then, bro, you're just totally lost, bro. Just give up. Just go home, bro. Just stay out of it. You're done. If you're looking at, what does Snoop Dogg have to say about black empowerment and, ending gang violence and, bringing, education and, consciousness to the streets, and Snoop Dogg ain't gonna do that, bro. Even if it's not where you want it from. That's not where you want it from, bro. You can't rely on rappers and, comedians and all these other commercialized things to do that. It has to be the people in the streets. It has to be the people themselves in the streets. You know what I mean? And you might get that outlet. You might get it. You might get some of that, right? But that can't be you can't rely on that. You can't expect that. It's just absolutely crazy. Okay, so this is another video if you want to watch. This is Who Shot Ya? Omar Bradley and Michael Harlan discuss Tupac and Eazy-E, Tupac murder and Eazy-E. This is important because I think Omar Bradley in this discusses having a conversation with Eazy about the lyrics, right? And Eazy understanding and being conscious. And that hold up. Let me see. Oh god. Let me see. I unclosed it. Recent. Okay. So yeah. So in this, you'll see where in 19 We're All in the Same Gang by Mike Conception and Ruthless, which obviously is Eazy's label. Mike Conception, everybody knows Mike Conception. And Ruthless. We're all in the same gang. Bro, these dudes were conscious about what was going on in the streets. They were conscious and about that type of stuff. Right? Doesn't matter what the music was or was not living up to. And in this obviously conversation he says that he had with Eazy recognized that, how the music could affect people and how he could have a role in influencing the youth and stuff like that before he was assassinated. That's obviously a big deal. And this is the type of stuff you have to bring up, right? So if you do want to go view a lot of the videos right here, to this channel right here, just type in this is 94 special report gangster rap protest. We're just gangster rap when the Hezekiah News and Films. Yeah, he pretty much he got all of them. All of the major reports on gangster rap. The hearings in 94, 96, 1990, the really early one stuff, that 1998, where it's still going out there and they're going after Scarface and stuff like that. And okay, I think that's it. What I wanted to discuss. But that pretty much speaks for itself. I'm at 2 hours. That's all I wanted to do. Like I said, I'm probably going to run some of this by anybody that might want to have a say in the way I'm framing it. But I felt I brought up a lot of enough of the points and enough of the context to show that one, it was a continuation of an already pre-existing agenda, and two, she was a post-turtle, bro. I mean, come on, she was put there. She was put there, and there was nothing that she could add to the conversation that who didn't know, right? Who couldn't have figured out that the lyrics were affecting people? And as you gotta keep in mind, even though Snoop, like I said, was an Asian, there's already attacking that type of music before. She just didn't pop up until then. Until Snoop, when it was really convenient and easy target, what they kind of put up for her. They put the bow on the T for her, and then so she could hit it off. For Snoop's music, because his music was like really, obviously all the stuff that she wanted to eat at. And like you could see, she was talking about, misogynistic lyrics and all this other stuff. And it doesn't matter that, she was, talking about, correctional facilities and, crime, race and stuff like that. They wanted to set that on the T to the anti-blackness. That's what I had to just hit this point one more time. They wanted to set it up to frame it such that they could blame rap music for this, right? Rap music ain't got no freaking effect on that, bro. That's another point to be made. I might have to, this is one of the points that I might have to put back towards the front. Like, I might have to re-edit this and put this back towards the front so people can get this right away. Rap music ain't having that type of effect. I listened to gangster rap music my entire life. From the time I was born. My parents' favorite, Too Short, Snoop. That was my parents' favorite type stuff. Snoop, DMX, Jay-Z, Pac, Big, NWA, all that type of stuff I was listening to growing up. Soundtracks, from all the, like Players Club and freaking Above the Rim type stuff. You know what I mean? I was listening to all that stuff my entire life. The Diary, all that stuff, all those people they was attacking, I was listening to all that stuff. Allowed to listen to it because my parents just listened to it. And I listened to whatever they listened to. So I was listening to this stuff my entire life. I never one point in time, did any of the negative stuff because that wasn't my environment. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying that, nobody, around, where I'm from did, anything negative, but I'm just saying rap music had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. You might have a song or something that you could relate to because your situation's the same as what they're talking about. But that's it. The situation's the same. If they was playing freaking gospel music, they'd just be playing gospel music. If they're playing Michael Jackson, you're just a freaking, you're just doing whatever gangbanging that you're doing, just listen to Michael Jackson. I mean, it doesn't matter what the heck the music's talking about or saying. The environment's the environment. What you have to deal with in terms of police brutality, in terms of mass incarceration, in terms of, gang culture, violence, drugs being sent to the community, guns being sent to the community. Like I said, the Hand of a Dead Body is probably, one of the songs on that critique of that, right? You know what I mean? He said, Gangsta Nip Tupac Spice One never gave a gun to me. You know what I mean? This is what it is. It has literally zero. I don't say it has zero effect because kids are affected by it, right? Are they affected by that more than school? Are they affected by that more than their parents? Are they affected by more than what their friends are doing? Or are they affected that by more than the environment, what's available and what's not available in terms of opportunities, in terms of how good the schooling is, in terms of how good of a home environment they got, in terms of how much food they got, resources, in terms of how much money that they have, in terms of how much they're stable their home, their parents' relationships are, in terms of how their grandparents or siblings or cousins or aunts and uncles are involved in their lives positively or negatively, in terms of the access to be able to play extracurricular activities, sports, all this other type of stuff that Tupac was trying to do, right? Because Tupac was talking about during that time, during an interview with, or not interview, but the phone call, Cody, Monster Cody, when the interview, if you want to Google it, I don't know if Pac was in, I don't think Pac was in prison. I think they just had a phone call after he got out or something like that. where they had discussion about him getting shot, and him trying to get into like the gangs and organizing for politics, and talking about starting youth leagues and having rappers head like football teams or whatever, and having like community get-togethers, and organizing and all this other type of stuff, right? All this type of stuff that they was trying to do positive, but see Delores Tucker's out there just yapping and running their mouth when they're trying to get into the communities, they're trying to get into the hood, they're trying to get to the streets and trying to make this a serious change. And she's in there talking about the corporations taking over rap music, and we're supposed to like look at that like that has like any type of effect on A, whether or not they were able to do it, and B, even if they did do it, like that has any impact on the community in comparison to what it would mean, right? Because we know for a fact, like I might be an anecdotal example, but there's tons of other people who didn't listen to nothing but the raunchiest, grimiest street type rap. Like that's definitely what I like, but that doesn't have anything to do. That doesn't have anything to do with what type of activities you're engaging in. Your environment is where you have opportunities, where your opportunities are, where your access is. What your parents, I mean, like, because the one video with Jared where he's talking to Asheru and I forget who else was in the video, and he's talking about Asheru's talking about going to schools and then putting a list, and he's saying, oh well, your parents, your favorite rapper has advice and stuff that's going against what your parents would teach you. Well, if your parents are teaching you that, then that's what I mean, come on. Your parents teaching you this and the rapper is talking about this isn't going to have anything different. And things that doesn't have anything to do with black people at all, like movies and TV, where obviously most of that stuff's completely controlled, and I mean TV shows and stuff like that, content could be good, bad, whatever. Like we don't have any really control over that. And we did both good throughout the 90s. There was tons of good TV shows that had positive messages. The Cosby Show. Every once in a while, you got what was like Smart Guy. About a kid who was a genius. You had like Sister wasn't terrible. Bad, like you had Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know what I mean? Talking about them going to college and situations with their families, and always having like some type of messaging behind it and stuff like that. We had all them type of shows, and then we don't control that either, and that had positive messaging. So what is it like? You could listen to Tupac, and then you could watch the Cosby Show. So I mean, come on. Cosby Show reruns the one the entire time that I was a kid, and that stuff came out like in the 80s or whatever it came out. So what's supposed to have the impact? I mean, even towards that point. So I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. I don't know if I have to add any more later because I'm over 2 hours. That's all I wanted to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off, and I'll go ahead and do what I gotta do with the editing, and do what I gotta do with having other people put their input in. And I might do like a quick summary, and add that in at the front, to make it like a little bit more concise, so you don't have to go through all them sources. Cause I went through the sources, so I'm gonna go ahead and do what I gotta do with that, and I'll work on a video. The next video that I said I was going to be doing earlier is probably going to be I'm going back to the stuff on Marxism and stuff like that. This is probably going to be a video that hits a little bit more, resonates with the type of people who like my Tupac videos though. So this will probably might get a little bit more, I don't know if it'll get a little more reviews or not. It should, but then I'll probably go back to my other stuff, and I'll hit on this type of stuff when it's relevant. Okay.